Hey everyone, my name is Jake, and welcome to the 18th episode of Good Timin. As always on this podcast, we're going to be talking all about one of our all-time favorite bands, the Beach Boys. And personally, I'm very excited for today's show because we are going to be covering one of my favorite albums by the band. And it's an album that is both really weird and divisive, yet really fascinating at the same time. So the album that I'm talking about, of course, is the band's 1977 release, The Beach Boys' Love You, or better known by fans as just Love You. And as we've done on our previous album episodes, we're going to be discussing the album's history and background and how it came together. We're also going to do a track-by-track rundown of the album and share our thoughts on each of the songs. And then towards the end of the episode, we're also going to be covering some of the outtakes from around this time, as well as the band's unreleased album from the same year, which is most commonly referred to as Adult Child. So for today's episode, I'm joined by our usual crew of Riley, Justin, and Matt. So as always, I'm glad to have you guys here, and I can't wait to discuss these two bizarre albums with you all. So before we get into the history of the album, do you guys want to quickly share some of your general thoughts and opinions on Love You?
I really enjoy Love You. It's definitely one of my favorites from them in the 70s. I would argue it's the last really, really great album. I think they had some later albums that were pretty good, where they had some good cuts, but this for me was like the last one that really kind of is like really, really good. And I like that it's kind of like a peek into Brian's psyche at the time, kind of where his head was. It's one of the few albums where he wrote pretty much all the lyrics, most of them, because usually he had a helper with lyrics, which in some cases I think it works. In other cases, I could kind of see why he had help with a lyricist, but at the same time, I think that is kind of makes it more interesting. So those are my thoughts on it.
Riley?
Oh yeah, okay. It's still growing on me. It's definitely grown on me since we started doing this whole podcast. Some tracks I think aren't gonna grow on me, like in general, but some of the ones that I've kind of generally just thought they were okay have really started to click with me, especially in certain parts of the song. But the songs I like on here are some of my favorite songs from the band. I'll Bet He's Nice, Mona. I mean, there's some others in there that I really like that I don't want to talk about because I feel like that'd be spoiling the whole purpose of this episode. But the tracks on here that I like are some of my favorite songs from the band and maybe ever. I really like the synth work on it. I think it's really ahead of its time and very Brian to try something new, something very new and something really out there and try to put it into popular music. And I think it works really well on here and is one of the first things that I really noticed about this album because I'm a big fan of synthesizers and that their use in music. And I feel like the Beach Boys doing an album that's pretty much all synthesizers is right down my alley. And it really works for the most part because the thing that doesn't really mess me up on this album isn't really the music or the production because that's one of my favorite parts of it. It's generally the lyrics that kind of bother me, but we'll get there. But it's definitely growing on me. I could see it growing on me more in the future. It's not going to be my favorite album by the band, but like I said, the songs that are really good are incredible.
For me, I've had a long time to kind of get used to this album. I first got this album maybe when I was like 8 years old, so really long time, probably over 30 years now. I remember the first time I played it, it sounded so weird because it was just unlike anything I'd ever heard before. Just like the synths, like a whole album full of like Moog synthesizers and like really weird electronic keyboards and stuff like that, and very little drums. There's like sometimes there's like a snare or like a bass drum, but it's just very bare bones. And just Brian's voice. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of information available on the album, so it's just kind of just like, what the hell is this? Like, and I just kept listening to it, and listening to it, and listening to it, and eventually I got it, but it took a while. I know for me, it was like a real grower album for me. It's kind of cool in the way that it's kind of captured that moment in Brian's life when he was really this wasn't his lowest point, but he was still like in a pretty low point, even with Dr. Landy being in the picture. Yeah, but it's probably like Matt said, like one of their last like big, like great artistic statements as a band.
Yeah, for me, if you listen to this podcast before, like you probably know my feelings on this album. I absolutely love it, but I feel like with a lot of people with this album, it was definitely a grower for me. Initially, I can remember the first time I heard it, I kind of had the same reaction as like you, Justin, just like baffled by it. Like, what the hell even is this? Why does it sound
Yeah.
like that? Why do the voices sound so like shot? But over time, it's just really grown on me. And I think for me, my enjoyment for the album, part of it comes from the songwriting itself and the songs, but also just like the quirkiness. Like I love the lyrics are just so Brian, honestly, like they're so personal to Brian. It's cool how I think, like you said, Matt, it kind of like captures a point in Brian's life, which I think is really cool. You get to kind of hear about his interests and some of the things he's into in the lyrics. Of course, yes, some of the lyrics are a little questionable. There's definitely some interesting things that we can get into when we go through the track by track rundown, but I just really enjoy it. I love the production. I love the synths, especially like the Moog. I love like the different sounds and just the arrangements. I just think it's a really well done album. I definitely understand why not everybody loves it. I can definitely see why it's a divisive album, but for me, I kind of find the quirkiness of it charming. So that's really why it works for me. So I think it's great.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the melodies on here, especially, but I mean, even a lot of the lyrics in the second half, like the second half is pretty ballad heavy, and I feel like in some ways is kind of a spiritual successor to Beach Boys today,
Yep.
especially with those ballads like Betty's Nice, and I don't know if Mona's really a ballad, but like The Night Was So Young, a lot of that stuff is very like kind of a grown up perspective on the songs in Beach Boys today, and Brian mentioned Spectre by name on this album, but I mean, I know it's all synths, but I feel like it's still very Spectre influenced. And I can kind of see where Brian's head was at, feeling very nostalgic. And you kind of see that on the cover too, if that makes any sense to you guys.
No, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and even on 15 Big Ones, like the nostalgia with like the covers, I just think Brian was in a very nostalgic like state of mind at that time, like writing about like adolescence and like, growing up. So, and I totally agree about side two. I've always felt that as well. Like you have The Night Was So Young, I'll Bet He's Nice, Let's Put Our Hearts Together. It really is like a spiritual successor to like today almost. I love the way that the album is structured like that. I think it's really cool.
This album cover to me always gave me like ugly Christmas sweater vibes. I don't know why.
For sure.
So,
yeah. Designed by Dean Torrance, right?
Yeah. So Dean said when he originally designed this album cover, it was supposed to be like a Navajo rug. That's the idea of this whole design. And it's also like the way that the paper that they used on it, it's like kind of unglossy, I guess you could say. Al Jardine later said it was like cheap cardboard.
Yeah, it's super cardboardy.
They specifically wanted that specific look, or Dean wanted that specific look. I shouldn't say they, because it was really Dean's idea. And to give it sort of this retro vibe. It's supposed to be like a rug, like a retro Navajo rug.
You can even kind of feel it on the paper right here. It feels different. It feels less papery and more scale, I guess.
Yeah.
Super weird. It's the color choice for me that kind of gives it that like, and maybe it's kind of retro-y because I mean, it looks like it's 8-bit and I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's like, I guess time because 8-bit
yeah,
not a thing in 77.
I was just about to say, I feel like cover is really ahead of its time.
It'd be interesting to see how he did this. Like what program did he use? Like not even a program. It'd be like I don't even know how they would do this back in. It'd be 76. This would be.
You have to ask Dean Torrance.
Design.
I would love to know, yeah, because I mean, it's such a unique album cover, and I think of all their album covers, like this one really fits the music so well. Like there's no other cover in their discography that would have fit this better than this cover.
This picture on the back of the guys. This
I love that. Love that picture.
This was photographed by Guy Webster. He was one of like the first rock and roll photographers, actually, and he photographed them a few times actually over the years. And when I'm in the midst of writing my book here, I actually reached out to his one of his daughters to try and get some information on his relationship with the band and stuff. And she didn't have too much information to give me, but she did wish us well on the podcast because I did let her know about the podcast, and so she's aware of us. And she said, "Thank you so much for mentioning my dad," because I said I was going to mention her dad on the podcast for this great shot he did of the guys, and also he did a shot for MIU as well from the same session.
Yeah, there's a 8-bit video game like music version of this album that's on YouTube.
I've heard it.
I'll admit some of those songs, some of the versions on there, I kind of prefer it in some ways. I'll mention them by name when we get to them, but
I actually have a piece of software that if you have a MIDI file, you can turn it into 8-bit and make it sound like Famicom or stuff like that. It's pretty cool. But
No,
it's
that's
only on Windows, so you have to use on your
mm,
Windows.
interesting. So before we get into like some more about the specific details behind the recording of Love You, I thought it would be good to first provide some general facts and background about the album in case any of our listeners aren't super familiar with the record or just need a refresher. So Love You was released on April 11th, 1977 on Brother Reprise Records, and it was the band's 21st studio album. The majority of the tracks on the album were recorded in late 1976 at Brother Studios in Santa Monica. And of course, one of the most notable things about this album is that all 14 tracks on it were written, produced, and arranged by Brian Wilson. So, of course, Brian had also produced the band's previous album, 15 Big Ones. But many of the songs on that record were covers, and several of the originals had already been written years prior. So, really, Love You was kind of the return of Brian as the band's main songwriter and leader in the studio. Of course, this return would be relatively brief, and then Brian would take a back seat again only a year or so later. But the songs that he did write during this creative period are honestly some of the most bizarre and fascinating songs that the band ever recorded. And I personally think that many of them are really brilliant. Like on 15 Big Ones, the majority of the tracks on Love You, they feature a lot of keyboards and synthesizers, particularly the Moog synthesizer. But this time even more prominently, to the point that you can consider this album an early synth pop album. So lyrically, this album really reflects Brian's personality at the time. Many of the lyrics deal with adolescent themes and topics, which admittedly can come across as a bit weird to listeners. Of course, by the time of this album's recording, all the band members were in their 30s, and Brian and Dennis's voices were pretty raspy and gravelly sounding. So I can see why this album can be kind of off-putting or disturbing to some listeners. But however, at the same time, I think that musically the album is really strong and enjoyable. I really love the melodies and the chord changes. I love the synth-heavy arrangements and the use of the Moog, like I said. And then honestly, I think that the rough vocals and the odd lyrics really add to the album's charm and appeal. And because of all that, Love You has become one of my very favorite Beach Boys albums. So I know that it's definitely not for everybody, and I totally understand why some fans struggle to get into the album or understand it. But for me, it's an essential record, and I'm just really happy that it exists. So hopefully that was a solid enough introduction for those of our listeners who aren't too familiar with Love You. But now to get into some more about the album's recording history and background, I'm going to hand it over to Justin. So Justin, do you kind of want to talk about how the album came together and just the overall recording process?
Yeah, so it was very complicated. I'm going to start off where 15 Big Ones ended off. That was released on July 5th. So the whole idea after 15 Big Ones was to release another album like almost right away within like a few weeks to have like an all originals album because they were already way behind their schedule with Reprise to deliver. I think they owed two more albums at that point. So in July, they ended up touring all throughout July after 15 Big Ones. And I think at that point, they were really focusing on their NBC TV special, which was coming out eventually. But then after they toured throughout July, of course, Brian's not with them at this point touring. He's still kind of working his way back into that. August 1st was the first recording session after 15 Big Ones. And Brian cuts another oldie, Ruby Baby. And then Hey Little Tomboy was its first, the first utterance of those lyrics on August 1st. And then August 5th was when the NBC TV special aired. The majority of that TV special was recorded June 20th and 25th. And then July 2nd and 3rd, which were the Oakland and Anaheim concerts, which we've talked about in another episode. And then till the end of August, they're doing more touring. I think they had these shows already booked up. And Brian was supposed to be at home working on music, but he wasn't at this point. He was just kind of with Dr. Landy and just kind of sorting himself out still. I know at this point too, he also had some pretty severe writer's block, which he mentioned a few times over the next couple years because Love You seems to be kind of like a one-off for him. He didn't really ever achieve that same sort of the same amount of songs ever again. just because of that writer's block, which lasted a really long time for him. So then August 18th, he continues work on Ruby Baby. And then August 21st, Marilyn Rovell, which is the song. And then he brings up the old multi-track of Sherry, She Needs Me, and he adds his vocals to that day, which I don't know if any of our listeners have ever heard that. It's pretty heartbreaking to hear Brian's new voice compared to his old 1965 voice from the original multi-track. And then we have a few tracks we don't really know the specific dates from, but they're somewhere around fall 1976. I would say closer to the Love You sessions. These tracks are That Special Feeling, Hey There Mama, We Got a Groove, You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling, and Lazy Lizzie, which is a very, very weird track. September, they continue touring, and mid-September, Mike actually gets hepatitis. So this is when the band is kind of like forced to, okay, now we got to do this album. Like we got to stop this touring. We got to get our shit together and get this thing together. Because like the last couple months, Brian's not really doing anything. There's not really any songs. Like you just have Marilyn Rovell and Hey Little Tomboy, basically. And maybe like some of those other tracks, like We Got a Groove, which is just like we got a groove. It's just like really, really basic, right? So then they're forced to cancel a bunch of shows after Mike gets hepatitis, and then October to November, this is kind of like the main Love You recording. Also, My Diane is recorded at this time as well too during the Love You sessions. And then by about November 16th, they make a compilation of basically rough mixes of all these Love You tracks. So this was a fairly like quick recording from October to kind of like mid-November, I would say. November 15th, they actually released Capitol released the Live in London Beach Boys 69 album, which had been the first time it had ever been released in America. So that kind of got fans really excited because a lot of them hadn't even heard that album because it was only available as an import before that. So that was kind of interesting. And then by about the end of November, Brian actually joined them on stage. His first show with them since like Anaheim in the summer was the Riverfront Coliseum in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then there's a couple different shows he went on afterwards. He did SNL on November 27th, and then the Mike Douglas show on December 8th. That's when that was aired. So this was kind of the tail end of the Landy period before he let Landy go. And Landy had him do a few different like things to make him more comfortable being in front of people. So this was kind of like this therapy of bringing him out in front of tens of thousands of people in shows and going to SNL and talking about his fears and stuff on Mike Douglas. So I think this helped Brian a lot. And then, of course, around before Christmas 1976, Landy is let go. He's fired, and they move on from there. So 1977, not much work is done until January 12th on the album because they were touring early on in January. And then Brian actually flew back to LA to work on the Airplane Tag. So it's just the ending of the song. I can't wait to see her face, that part. And then 2 days later, the album was assembled. So that was kind of like a last minute addition to the album. And then he missed like a bunch of shows because of that, because he was in LA assembling the album. And then, and then after that, he recorded Still I Dream of It on January 19th. That was originally a demo recorded for Frank Sinatra, I believe. Frank Sinatra and Stevie Wonder. He wanted either one of them to record it. He wasn't sure which one. And then by that point, at the end of January, they ended up canceling a couple of Hawaii shows because Mike had to go to Switzerland to be with the Maharishi. He was learning to levitate, so he was going to be gone for about 6 months. So now you have Brian, Dennis, and Carl kind of going like, what are we going to do now? We're not touring. we're not recording. So why don't we work on an album? So now this is when the adult child tracks start coming into play. So basically, these tracks were recorded really fast. The dates that we have thus far are basically February to March 1977. So it's basically like 2 months. Dennis was working on Pacific Ocean Blue at the same time as well. So like the studio was like booked solid for like 2 months because of this. Not much is known about these tracks. I know a lot of them were kind of meant as demos, like Still I Dream of It was like a demo for Frank Sinatra. And I can't help but think some of these like big band tracks were like that in mind, kind of thing, to send off to different singers. And then April 11th, there's not much else going on here. Like he's just recorded the tracks February through March. April, there's nothing really going on. It's just Love You was released on April 11th. In the US, it hit number 53, UK number 28, and Canada number 66. So it wasn't too big of a success, other than maybe the UK. And then in a weird move, over a month after the album was released, they released the first single. Usually they release the single before the album. This was Honking Down the Highway Back to the Solar System, and it did not chart. So kind of showed how the public kind of received this album and the songs from it. Kind of another really interesting thing, because there's not much else going on here. They're kind of waiting for Mike to come back from Switzerland. In summer 1977, Lady Linda was started. So that song actually took 2 years to kind of come to its full fruition. And then when Mike comes back, they assembled the Adult Child album on June 27th. I assume this was assembled to kind of show Mike what they'd been working on thus far. I don't know if it was actually like assembled as an album, but it's a rather disjointed listen, I must say. Yeah, so that's it.
Did Mike learn to levitate?
I don't know if he actually did, but that was the whole point of the trip.
Didn't for the adult child tracks, like didn't Mike kind of like freak out when he first like heard some of that stuff? Like I read like he listened to some of the big band stuff and he was like, Brian, what the F are you doing? You know, and Brian was like, I'm just doing what I want to do, you know, I'm making the music I want to make. And I guess Mike just kind of freaked out from what I read, but
yeah, there was reports of that. We don't really know for sure because those reports actually came from one of Mike's brothers, which isn't the best source on those things. But I would say that that's probably true myself, just from what I've read over the years. And it just makes sense that he kind of assembled that album just to show Mike what they were doing when he was gone, and then played it for him, and then he's just like, it's crap kind of thing, and then forget it then. So
I feel like that's more for the commercial value of it though, because I mean you saw the way Mike reacts to a lot of the Love You stuff where he's like, that's a motherfucker. And I feel like with this, I mean, after Love You didn't really do so well, I feel like Mike just kind of wanted to get some money, get some of that commercial value. And with a lot of that adult child material, there wasn't a lot of a commercial value there.
There's no commercial value.
I know, that's what I mean. Like I don't think it's anything musical. I just think it's I want the money, Brian. And
Mike's definitely. I think Al was on the same side as well too with that. They want to make a living. They're in a band, you know, like that's what they do for a living. I can understand that 100%.
I was gonna say, like, Mike and Al are looking at it from the commerce side in the sense that, like, especially because in the mid-late 70s, that was around the time that album sales really started to explode. I know that's when they started
live.
Yeah, they started, like, you know, you would release an album and you'd release a bunch of singles from it, and you kind of let the era, so to speak, last a little bit longer. I mean, that's the time of, you know, like Hotel California and Rumors, and those both sold millions and tens of millions of copies. So I think I can see why Mike and Al were looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I have to think like with Love You and Adult Child, like had Love You sold better, maybe there wouldn't have been such that like harsh reaction from Mike to the Adult Child stuff. But I feel like, in a way, Love You was kind of the test. It was like, okay, like we're going to put Brian back in the studio. We're going to kind of let him have control, you know, and put this out. And then unfortunately, it didn't do too much commercially. So I think that was kind of the band's sign is like, okay, like maybe we shouldn't, let Brian have full reins on these albums, like on our future releases. So then when Mike heard, the adult child stuff and supposedly freaked out, I mean, I can kind of see where he was coming from, because if we're being honest, I mean, I love a lot of those tracks, but they're even more uncommercial than the Love You tracks. So there's anybody that argues that like, oh, like adult child should have been released. Like, I wish it had been released, but I mean, it would have bombed commercially, like no doubt.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. It would have been too weird for people to even take, like, and I also don't think it would have been released the way that we know it today. I think that there would have been some changes made to it before it was actually released, just because it is so disjointed. And those old tracks that they kept reusing over and over and over, like on these unreleased albums over the years, like they're just like tracks that they never really finished, and they just throw them on different tapes, kind of thing. So I
Right.
think those tracks would have been replaced with other things that Mike would have recorded once he came back, and they would have gotten together and done that.
And then half the album is like big bandy, which is like very odd, and then like the other half is like this Moog synth heavy kind of like really out there lyrics. So yeah, if that had been released, I can't imagine that selling very well at all.
Yeah, it would have been bad, I think. And then also, like, kind of like what you said, Justin. Like, I feel like some of the songs they don't feel like they're even done. Like lines, the
Yeah.
song "Lines,"
Yeah.
it's got a nice opening, but then it just kind of, I don't know, it just feels like there definitely should have been more there than what is actually recorded. So, one other thing I wanted to ask you, Justin, if so all those like piano demos that go around about from like the Love You tracks, like the piano versions of like I'll Bet He's Nice. Brian's playing it in front of the band. Let's Put Our Hearts Together, Airplane. Do you know like at what point those were recorded or like what month?
I would say around September, October.
Okay.
So when Mike was right about when Mike got sick, maybe a little bit before that, around that period. Yeah.
Yeah, those recordings are really fascinating to me because like you kind of hear like the core of the songs like without like all the synthesizers.
All the production. Yeah.
I think I've read people say like they enjoy those versions of the songs more, even though like Brian, it's very like rough vocals on them. They're not like professional by any means, but like you can really hear like the value of the songs and like how well they're written, like the chord changes. Of course, like on I'll Bet He's Nice, it's awesome to hear like Mike react to it. Like when Brian gets to the bridge, like the baby, don't you ever? Mike's like, oh my god, and then at the end, like Riley said, he's like, that was a motherfucker. So it's cool to hear like people that like to portray Mike as like the villain in the Beach Boys story. It's like he was supportive of Brian's work at this time, like you could definitely hear like he was impressed by these tracks. And unfortunately, when they didn't sell and when the album I Love You, when it bombed, I mean, that kind of was like the sign that like, well, like we gave Brian a shot, we tried to make these songs. It just didn't work out. So I can kind of see why, from that point on, the band kind of transitioned into this more reliving the past kind of sound, on a lot of those albums.
Yeah. Well, those demos too, they weren't even available until probably like the late 90s, maybe mid 90s. So for many years, people didn't even know that, like they thought Mike hated that album. And then when you hear that, it's like, oh, wow. I had no idea. So
right.
I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, wow, did he actually say that? Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully when we get like the 74 to 78 box set, hopefully we get those demos on like streaming because that would be awesome, so people hear those that haven't heard them. So all right, do we want to get into the track by track rundown, guys, of Love You?
We got a lot of them. All
right, so let's get into it. So the first track on side 1 of Love You is Let Us Go On This Way. So to be honest, this one actually was a bit of a grower for me. I initially didn't care for it. I know that a lot of people tend to say that this is one of their favorite songs on the album. But it's really grown on me over time. The opening is definitely like really like powerful. Like you got Carl with the "To Get You, Babe, I Went Through the Ringer." Like it's a very interesting introduction to the album. I'm sure that like people listening to it at the time were like, "Oh boy, like this is interesting." This is not like anything else I've heard from the Beach Boys. But it's a well-written song. I like the vocals on it. I like the little middle section with Mike, and it's a good song. I wouldn't say it's a favorite on the album for me, but I enjoy it, and it's kind of got like those like the adolescent lyrics theme that you see throughout this album. So, what do you guys think of Let Us Go On This Way?
Yes, I really like this song. I think it's a great way to start off the album. I kind of like how Carl has like that kind of throaty scream at the beginning. It's a really enjoyable song, and yeah, I really like it.
I really like this one. It took me a while to get used to Carl's vocal. I really like the "going to school isn't my fondest desire." That part's really cool. Um, it took a while to get used to the vocals, but I really enjoy it now. I think it's definitely one hell of a track to open up the album, and the hey that part's
Yeah,
again, like a lot of the with a lot of these stuff, like I'm not used to this kind of style or this kind of quirkiness in an album, so it took me a while to get used to it. But once I kind of settled down with it, it's pretty easy to enjoy this one. It's not one of my favorites on here, but I definitely enjoy it a lot, and I think it works great as the opener.
I think for me, I listened to 15 Big Ones before this, even when I was a kid. So I kind of expected like a 15 Big Ones part two. So I did expect some synthesizers, but not like as synth heavy as it ended up being. Um, and I had the vinyl. It was a used copy of it. And what I did was I was going to some party or something, and I wanted to listen to it on the way in the car and something. So I put the vinyl on and I made a cassette of it, and I just kind of went away and let it run, and I didn't even listen to it. So then I get into the car, I'm listening to it on the cassette. I'm like, what the fuck is this? It just the mixing and the synths are so heavy on it, right? The bass synth is just like shakes you basically. And Carl's vocal is just so rough and so it's emotive too at the same time though. And that's the thing with the vocals on this album. They're very rough. Not everything is in tune and in time, but it's just like the emotion behind it is it's undeniable, you know. And I think that's part of the reason why everybody likes this album, because that emotion comes through, especially on like songs like this, where it's like the opener. It's like really fast and really powerful, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, and like the synthesizer on this, like yeah, like you're introduced to like this album right away in terms of that, because like you think of like that middle section, like the extra sensory perception, like the synth on that is like so prominent, like in the
It's so
background.
heavy and it's
Yeah.
mixed a little bit too loud. I would say I think Carl mixed this album. He mixed it a little bit too loud. It's I was listening to it on vinyl what about a month ago, and I
Mhm.
hadn't heard it for many years, and that part stuck out to me like, whoa, this is like your mix, it's too loud. It needs to be brought down.
Yeah. And you know, for a lot of people, like with Carl, like you expect him to have like the cleanest vocals on a lot of these albums. You know, like Carl is just known for having such a graceful, like really pretty voice. And like on here, like yeah, he sounds really like gritty, and you know, he's singing in a different style than what people are familiar with hearing from him. You know, like even on 15 Big Ones, he doesn't really sound like that or sound like this on that album. So it's very interesting. Definitely take some time to get used to. I think that was one of the things that I kind of had an issue with initially on this song, was kind of getting past that weird vocal, but I do really like it now. I think it's a great way to open the album. I think it was like the correct sequencing for sure to start with this song.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was gonna say kind of a similar. It sounds like a similar vocal to "You Need a Mess of Help" almost.
Right.
Yeah,
Almost
you're
trying
right.
to
Yeah.
sound kind of gritty and rough. It doesn't really work for me, but I feel like it works a lot better for me on this one than it does on "You Need a Mess of Help" because that one's a little bit weirder.
Yeah.
I feel like this kind
Well,
of fits the synths more.
You Need a Massive Help also is I think it's doubled if not tripled. Like he did it two or three times, the vocal. That might be why it sounds so weird. This one is just I think it's just one vocal.
interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to the second track on Love You, and this is Roller Skating Child. So I know this song, there's some people aren't a huge fan of this one. I think the big reason for that is the lyrics are a bit off-putting for sure. Personally, I really enjoy this song because I think it's great melodically. I find it really catchy and fun. I love Mike's vocal on the verses. But the highlight of the song for me is that bridge section where Al comes in with the round and around we go, the music. Like that whole section is just so freaking catchy to me. I get that stuck in my head all the time. But I think it's a fun song. With this album, with some of these songs with like the off, like kind of the weird lyrics, I think the way you kind of have to view it is like Brian is writing from like the perception or the viewpoint of like a teenager, like an adolescent, you know. So if you view it from that perspective, I think it's a bit less off-putting. But again, like listening to it like with fresh ears and hearing like these like really raspier voices, you know, like these guys that are clearly not young anymore, you know, like they're in their 30s, and they're singing these songs like this, I can see how it's off-putting. But I really love this song. I love the synths on it, and I think it's great. So what do you guys think of Roller Skating Child?
I think it is catchy. I do like the production, but the lyrics are rough. I've said it before. It's almost Lolita-esque. I'm just imagining, you know, like some girl sucking on a lollipop with the sunglasses and just kind of like looking really young, like jailbaity. I don't think that was the intent, of course, but it's just kind of where my mind goes to it. So it's one of those songs that I love it melodically. I like the production, but the lyrics are rough. The lyrics are pretty rough, I have to admit.
Yeah, I kind of had the same thoughts about the lyrics, but then I kind of started to think about this and a couple of the other tracks on here with the mindset of this is from a teenager's perspective, but at the same time, this is also like a 35-year-old Brian Wilson. But you kind of have to think about where he was at writing this song, where he has a lot of that nostalgic mindset, and this is kind of him like looking back at his teenage years. Like this is, like I said, like a spiritual successor to his to today and that kind of Spectre style melodically. I really like that the owl bridge. That's kind of starting to get me with this song. I really like it. The round and around. And I know the vocals are kind of a bit weird on here, but the last rollers, that part's also pretty cool. Melodically it's pretty solid. The verses don't do a whole lot for me, but I still kind of enjoy it. This one I can see growing on me in the future. I know it absolutely rips live, but as for the album track, it's definitely one of my lesser favorites on here, but it's growing on me compared to some of the other ones. So,
Justin?
This album, well, this song specifically too, it has very I'm gonna get a little bit technical here. With it's one of the first of their albums where you can really hear like really short delays on the vocals and stuff. And like you mentioned that one section, round and round, round, round we go. When Al sings there, you can hear like a really short delay on his vocal, and I think it's really cool, like to hear some of these older. They had a couple different delay units in their studio at the time, and I think I linked you guys on one of them before. It was Philips delay that they had since 1969 that they used on this album, and but you can really hear it prominently in the vocals because there's not a lot of reverb going on. Brian wanted like a really like clean production. Like he didn't want a lot of reverb and a lot of like clutter. So that's why the songs are like very succinct and like only involve maybe like 4 or 5 different synth parts, and that's about it. Like there's not really like dense orchestration like he had with Today and some of these other the earlier Beach Boys productions. And I think also in terms of the lyrics, Mike talked about this a bit too, in like that era of like 74, 75, when they started to get really popular again with Endless Summer. And they had like all these kids coming to their shows and stuff. And then it's like now their audience is like all these kids. So now what do they write about? They're gonna have to write about what their audience wants to hear. So I think that's part of the reason why Brian's starting to write from like a teenage perspective, because he's thinking, okay, who's buying our records? Maybe it's teenagers. Let's give them what they want to hear. Yeah, I don't think he was thinking of it in terms of, okay, I'm a 34-year-old man. This is my weird fetish that I have, and I'm gonna let everybody know about it, kind of thing. And then Roller Skating Child too, if I'm not mistaken, it was that was written because Carney had recently started getting really into ice skating at the time, and I think he thought that roller skating was more of like a trend, I guess. So it was like it rolled off the tongue a little bit better, Roller Skating Child. And this was in the era too of you had like the Bee Gees with Boogie Child and like all these other like it was just like a slang of the time. So I don't think it was really meant as like a really like how people portray it today. It has a very different meaning today than it did back then. And I think when you take in consideration like the audience perspective that they're trying to think of, and the fact that like all these things are going around at the same time, it's that's what the idea is behind that song.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to honestly look at it. And yeah, like you said, roller skating was really big at that time, so it makes sense. The subject Brian viewing that as like something the public can relate to, so I can see that. One other thing I quickly wanted to mention, one of my favorite lyrics from this song, there's quite a few like lyrics from this album that I really enjoy because I just think they're so like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like off the cuff, like just like Brian, yeah. One of the lines that I love is I go and put my skates on and I catch up with her. We do it holding hands. It's so cold I go burr. Like I love that lyric. It's the cheesy lyric. It's funny. I love it.
Gosh, oh gee.
Oh gosh, oh gee. It really sends chills inside of me. Yeah. All right. So we'll move on to track 3 on the album, and this is one of my personal favorites on Love You, and I think a lot of people like this one as well. And it's Mona. So this song is interesting because it's really a very simple song. It's really like the same, I think 3 or 4 bars over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's not complex musically by any means, but I love the arrangement on it. Dennis sings the lead on this, and it is admittedly a very rough vocal for sure. He's like in full like rasp mode. It's like, come to me. Like he's in that total late 70s Dennis voice that we all know. But I really love the song, and a lot of it's the lyrics, honestly. I think the lyrics are just so fun on this. It's like basically talking about like his date with this girl, and they're gonna go dancing and see what is it, an 8 o'clock movie, 9 o'clock dinner, something like that. I love the little references at the end, like listen to the do-ron ron now, listen to Be My Baby, I know you're gonna love Phil Spector. Like nobody else could have wrote that lyric except Brian, and I absolutely love it. It's such a fun song, and it gets stuck in my head all the time, even though it's super simple. So what do you guys think of Mona?
Yeah, I really like that song. I love Dennis's vocal on it. I love like the pounding drums. I love like the sound of the synths. I love the lyrics. I love the part where it's like, listen to the do-ron run. Now I know you're gonna love Phil Spector. I just think it's a really awesome song. It's probably my favorite on the first side, along with another one that's coming up in a little bit. But I really, really enjoy Mona. I've always really liked that song. That was one that like right away I loved.
Yeah, this was one of the first ones I really liked from it. It's only 4 chords. The lyrics are so catchy. It's weird because if I found out a song was only 4 chords and it's like 2.5 minutes, I'd probably throw it away. But this is one of the first ones that really hooked me on this album, and I didn't even notice it. It just kind of keeps me hooked. I feel like Dennis's vocals like sound so desperate and sound like you really nostalgic and like you really want to kind of go back to your childhood kind of thing. And it totally sells the song for me. And this is like one of the first ones that really hooked me on this album. Right now, it's my most listened to Beach Boys song of the year. So I feel like that shows a lot. Yeah. Really, really incredible song. I mean, and the lyrics are they're like perfectly corny and cheesy for me. Like it hits right the spot where it's the sweet spot and it works so well. I really like that Spectre line too. It's pretty funny.
Very Brian. This was one of the most accessible songs to me when I first heard this album. So I know it's just a 4-chord song and it just goes over and over and over again, but it's just the way Dennis sings it. It's so convincing, and he did a really great job on the vocal. And Brian, you can hear Brian pounding away on the organ in the background and stuff. It's really cool. It's so Brian of the time, and it just makes you smile because you just think that he had so much fun writing the song. He did, and referencing Spectre and like, yeah, this was his life back then. It was fun.
Yeah, and like I totally agree with what you guys said, O'Reilly. Like with like Dennis's vocal really selling it. Like if somebody like Carl with like a smoother voice had done this, I don't think it would have been near as effective. But I think with Dennis's rougher vocal, it really gives it like what you said, that desperate sound. Like this guy is desperately wanting to like relive the past, almost having like a midlife crisis in a way. Like thinking about like these nostalgic like memories of growing up and going on dates. And yeah, I just think it's a really charming and fun song. And Dennis's vocal it's just killer. So I love it.
Dude, I think I told you, Jake, like I really want to do a shoegaze cover of this, but I feel like the fans would rip me apart.
Worth a try. See how it comes out.
I would love to
I don't think you'll like it. You're going to be my main audience.
All right, so we'll move on to the 4th track on side 1 of Love You, and this is a really interesting one. This is Johnny Carson. So this was definitely a grower for me. I can remember when I first heard this one, it didn't really do anything for me. I didn't hate it, but it just didn't do anything for me. But over time it really grew on me. And I think this one is one of the ones where like the synth work really does it for me. Like I love the use of synthesizer on this track. Like there's that part, that line, like when the man comes on and says he is Johnny, and then there's this synth line that goes like dun 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 dun. I've always loved that. And just the lyrics to this one, another example of like this, this album just really being really personal to Brian. It's literally about Johnny Carson. It's about like the Johnny Carson show that, Brian probably watched every night. And I've seen some people like compare the lyrics or like interpret the lyrics to this as almost being about like Brian's own struggles at the time, like basically like all the expectations and pressure that's been put on him at the time, which I think is a really interesting interpretation. If you look at the lyrics, you can kind of see how people interpret it that way, and I think that's really interesting. But yeah, for me, I just like this song a lot. I think it's fun. I don't know if I'd say it's like a top 3 or 4 song on the album for me, but I do really like it a lot. So it's definitely quirky, but it's fun. So what do you guys think of Johnny Carson?
Definitely quirky. It's interesting. It's kind of one thing that I've always kind of admired about Brian Wilson is how he can write these really intriguing songs about the most mundane of topics. Think like nothing, and this is just the Johnny Carson show, I think my favorite part of the song is like, who's a man that we admire? And I also really like kind of like that like instrumental breakdown right before like the boom, boom, boom. I really like that part. And I was actually just reading that Johnny Carson was actually asked about the song in 19 said, sure, I heard it. Someone sent over to the office. I don't think it was a big seller. I think they just did it for the fun of it. It was not a work of art. Okay, yeah, but I agree. It's not one of my favorites on the album, but I like it for what it is. It's quirky, it's interesting, so it's enjoyable.
I feel like this is where the album kind of starts to fall apart for me in some aspects. I really want to like this song. I feel like Mike's kind of going with a similar approach that he did to Monster Mash, where he's like super serious, almost like scary. He's like, he sits behind the microphone. I don't know. I feel like this is where it's Brian's quirkiness kind of does a little too much for me. Like I can kind of appreciate the approach to a song like Roller Skating Child, where it still has that, I guess, innocence to it in some way. But this is him, I feel like, trying too hard. Um, I like I said, I really want to like it. I appreciate the synth work on it, but besides that, this song has never really done much for me. I keep trying to like it. I keep listening to it. Hopefully it'll click, but because I feel like this compared to one of the other ones on here, I can see myself eventually liking, but as of right now, it's probably not happening. I don't really care for this one.
This song is really, for me, intriguing the way that the intro and the synths are arranged and stuff like that. Like there's like 3 or 4 different synth parts, like arranged differently, to create this kind of this chord progression. And yeah, just like you guys said, it's just the most mundane of topics, and somehow he made it interesting and fun to listen to. And with Mike's vocal, I always thought his vocal sounded kind of weird on this song. Like they played around with the tape speed or something, but maybe I'm just imagining that. But yeah, I think it's a really solid track on the album, and we're what 4 songs into the album, and all of them have been good so far. So yeah, I think it's a really solid start to the album thus far.
Yeah, one part of this song I forgot to mention that I really love, besides that little fun outro, like the "Who's the man that we admire." I also love that
The
part.
vocals are rough too.
It's nice to have you on the show tonight. I love like how it goes
Yeah.
back and forth during that. I always like kind of sing along to that whenever it comes on. I think it's a lot of fun. Also, I thought of the lyric, like one of the lyrics that kind of supports like that interpretation that like the song is actually about like the pressures being put on Brian at the time. There's that line about it's like when guests are boring, he fills up or the slack,
The
something
slack,
like
yeah.
that. That network makes him break his back. I think you can interpret that as like like the pressures of like the record company and the band just being like, come on, Brian, like write more songs. I feel like that's a line where you can really kind of interpret that meaning. And again, is it really about that? I don't know. Obviously, like I feel like Brian would be the only one that would know that, but it's definitely an interesting interpretation of the song. So, all right, so we'll move on to track 5 on Love You. And this is kind of an interesting one because it was recorded years prior, actually, and it kind of stands out because of that. So the song is Good Time. I believe this was a Brian and Al co-write, if I'm not mistaken. And so this was recorded around the time of Sunflower, like around like 1970-ish or so. And you can definitely tell because Brian's vocal on this sounds much more clean. It honestly sounds unrecognizable compared to his vocals on Throughout Love You. So totally different voice. Thematically, I think the song fits okay. It's kind of about like he's talking about like his multiple girlfriends, I guess. And this also has some fun lyrics. It's got a catchy chorus like maybe it won't last, but we don't care. My baby and I just want a good time. Like it's catchy. I wouldn't say it's a favorite of mine on this album. I think part of the reason why is because it does kind of stand out because the production is so different. All these other songs have like this really heavy synthesizer, and this one's a lot more different sounding. So it's not a favorite of mine, but I do think it has a catchy melody and it has grown on me over time. So I do like it. Definitely not a skip. What do you guys think of Good Time?
It's a solid song. I kind of wish like they had re-recorded it, kind of like in more of the style. I just don't really think it fits on the album because you could tell it was an older track, not just with the vocals, but with the production, and everything. I think my favorite part of the song is like my girlfriend Betty or whatever. She's kinda skinny, and so she needs her falsies on. Like that's just such a Brian lyric. I enjoy it for what it is, but I just feel like it doesn't quite fit on Love You. Like you could tell it was just kind of tacked on. That's just my only issue with the song.
Yeah, it's pretty decent. I don't really like the verses. They don't really do too much for me, but when it's hold on, let me pull up the lyrics because otherwise I won't know how to say it. And then, and when I'm looking at her, the sound of it, that part's pretty cool. And then maybe it won't last, but what do we care? That part's really fun. But then the verses come back and it just the verses kind of suck. But the pre-chorus and the chorus are really good. I do like the production on it. And I feel like this is actually a song they easily could have re-recorded with the synths, especially with the little like clicking at the beginning. And then you get to they easily could have re-recorded this one, but it doesn't really fit. I don't skip it. I enjoy it. It's kind of on the edge of whether it'll make my Beach Boys playlist, but yeah, it's all right. It's like a 6 out of 10.
This is one of those songs that show Brian's writer's block, basically. So he's reaching into the past to kind of pad out the album. And this was originally a song that was recorded for American Spring. And he actually recorded a vocal, like a guide vocal in I think it was 1970 or 1970. I don't think it was recorded in 69. But that guide vocal you hear is the one that ended up on this song. They actually just muted Marilyn's vocal and put Brian's vocal back in. That was all that was done to the song. I don't think that he would have had the patience to remake this song. Just with what was going on at the time, it's just it was a mad rush to try and get this thing out, and just whatever they could at the time, like whatever tracks they could pull, he'd pull them, kind of thing. So I'm surprised he didn't put "Help Is on the Way" and all those other tracks on this album, but I'm glad he didn't because he writes some pretty great tracks, even though he did have writer's block at the time. But I think that the song too, like if they had originally released this in 1970, I don't know if on Sunflower, I don't even know where it would fit, even maybe Sunflower, but even as a single or something, I think it would have been better than releasing it on this album because it really does not fit at all. And for many, many years, listening to this album and not really having a lot of information about it, I had no idea when it was recorded. I just knew that it was his old voice and it was probably recorded a few years prior or something. But yeah, it does not fit.
Yeah. I think, the only way it really fits is thematically, just because the lyrics, again, it's kind of like this adolescent, I feel like, point of view. He's reminiscing about like these multiple girlfriends. And I also love the line, and when she gets to dancing, I feel it's like romancing, especially when we're dancing close, and in the background, you got like the da-da-da-das. I love that. It's a catchy song. Just I wouldn't say it's a highlight of the album, though. All right, so now we're moving on to the 6th track on the album, and this is one of my personal favorites on Love You. This is Honking Down the Highway, or the Gosh Darn Highway, however you want to call it. I freaking love this song. This is an Al lead vocal, and I think Al just absolutely kills it. I think this is honestly one of my favorite Al vocals, period. I think it's great. Love the lyrics. It's about this guy driving over to see his girlfriend, and like the parents are like insisting, like, yeah, he has to see her. Like she's, you're the only one she loves. The lyrics kind of like that. Also some interesting lyrics like the take in one little inch at a time now till we're feeling fine. That's an interesting line, but it's a lot of fun. Love the synth work on this, and then like the backing vocals are very like weird sounding, like the honk 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 down the highway. Like they almost don't really sound like the band much. Like they sound very weird to me, but I do really like the song. I think it's charming and fun. I think it's got a great melody, so I love it. I can see why it didn't do much as a single though. I cannot see how this would have fit in on the radio at the time, so I'm not surprised it kind of bombed commercially. But what do you guys think of honking down the gosh darn highway?
Yeah, this is probably my other favorite on side one. I love it. I love like the pounding drum sound, the boom 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 boom, and I love Al's vocal. It's probably one of my favorite Al vocals. I really like the take it one little inch at a time now till we're feeling fine now. I guess I got away with girls. I think that's like my favorite lyric. I really enjoy the song a
That
lot.
meant
Yeah, this one's kind of growing on me a little bit. I still think it's like a 7 out of 10, but I really like the chord changes on this one are pretty cool. I think it's the "Who cares if we are a little lonely" kind of thing. Like I like that once it kind of like shifts a little bit in the. I guess it's a pre-chorus. It's still a bit corny. Like gosh darn highway, but I feel like if they gave this one a bit more energy, or they gave it a kind of a live treatment with like a lot of more rocking energy, kind of like how they did with the roller skating child. I feel like it would work a lot better. I do like that this one has drums on it, though. I really like the drums. I feel like it really needs that, and I feel like there's a little bit maybe like some guitar work on it or something. It would work a lot better for me. But the chord changes are pretty cool. Definitely growing on me. I could see this one growing on me a lot more in the future. I just gotta listen to it more.
Mm-hmm.
those pounding drums at the beginning. That was actually Brian that played those. It's pretty funny. But and another couple things you guys mentioned, the honk honk honking down the highway, the background vocals. That's Dennis on the bottom, and that's Brian on the top. You can hear
Mm.
that like Brian can barely reach those notes. It's like really, it's like almost shouty, right? It's pretty funny, but yeah, this is a really catchy song. It's a really bare kind of arrangement, but it's fun. It kind of harkens back to kind of the band's kind of earlier kind of vibe and sound. And while it wouldn't have been like the greatest single to release, I would have liked if they would have made a video for this. I think it would have been fun to do. But obviously they didn't. Also, this song was originally sung by Billy Hinchy, and Dr. Landy actually made the Maurice's vocal and put Al's vocal on. That's what ended up happening with that. So, yeah.
On that Billy Hinchy version, there's like a little keyboard solo towards the end that didn't make the final version, but I actually really like that little solo. It's like
Yeah.
melody. It's like do 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 do. I wish they had kept that because I really like that.
Yeah, that's part of the creative process, coming up with these different parts, and then you mix certain things out and bring things in and out, kind of thing. And that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, this is one of those songs that it works for me, like both I because I love the melody and I love the lyrics. Like some of these, I feel it's the lyrics that work, and other of these, it's the melody. For this one, I
It's
feel like
fun.
both are really just fun. Yeah, like the
Yeah.
who cares if I gotta spend my money, even if I have to act funny. Like it's, I just love the rhymes, even if they're really
Yeah.
simplistic. I just think it's fun. So
Yeah.
I love this. All right, so closing out side one of Love You, we have everyone's favorite Beach Boys song, Ding Dang. So as we all know, if you're a Beach Boys fan listening to this, you probably know Brian has a bit of an obsession with this riff, this like shortened bread-esque riff. And that's what this song pretty much is. It's a repeating riff. And the band is shouting, you know, ding, dang, woo! And it's a lot of fun. Again, it's not really much of a song, but I think as like a side one, like as a way to close side one, I think it's kind of just a fun little, fun little track. It's fun to sing along to. I love the little verse melody, like the I love the girl, I loved her so madly. I treat her so kind, but she treats me so badly. I think that's Mike singing that, right? I'm pretty sure.
It is.
Yeah, but I really like it. It's fun, and one of the many tracks where you can hear Brian doing this piano riff. So there's definitely, and there's more of that in the future coming after this as well. But one other thing I wanted to mention too, technically a co-write with Roger McGuinn from the Byrds. So that's interesting as well. You know, I feel like if you don't know too much about the band, you might find that shocking that like this kind of like throwaway track has a co-write from Roger McGuinn of the Byrds of all people, but he's on there. So what do you guys think of Ding Dang?
I think it's a fun. I think I said this before. I think it's a fun trifle. Like it has a cool riff. It's a fun little trifle. I know it's almost become like a meme at this point. But that's all it is for me. It's just a fun trifle. It's just not fleshed out enough. It's not, a minute long. I would love to hear what a fleshed out Ding Dang would sound, more lyrics,
Short
more
and
stuff to it, That's just how I feel about it.
I unironically love this one.
Yeah.
The first time I listened to it, I'm like, this shit rocks. I feel like this is where the quirkiness kind of works for me. I love that it's a Roger McGuinn co-write. I think it's because Brian played Shorten and Bread for him like for a couple of hours or something like along the lines of that, where I think Roger McGuinn was staying the night at his house. I think Brian, like when Roger went to bed, Brian was playing Shorten and Bread. And then when Roger woke up, Brian was still playing Shorten and Bread. I think that's the story. I think Justin could probably correct me on that, but
Yeah, I
something
think
like
you're right.
that. And so they did Ding Dang. I think Roger McGuinn wrote the one verse, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know my Shorten and Bread facts. But I unironically love this one. Like I see, like the first time I listened to it, I didn't know any of the backstory. I didn't know anything of it. I'm like, oh, this is a lot of fun. And then I learned the backstory of it, and I love it a lot more. So really, really love it. Freaking rocks. And the finished version of this song is just Shorten and Bread. So
Yeah.
it's part of the
So
Shorten
this
and Bread saga. I think there's like
The saga.
there's a YouTube video that's like 20 minutes long, and it's like every single version of Shorten and Bread that the Beach
Oh,
Boys.
it's longer than 20. It's longer than that. I forgot how long it is, but it's longer
2
than
I know
hours.
20.
there's a 17-minute version of Shorten and Bread too. That's on YouTube. So
This song is kind of just an interlude for me. It's not really a song. Um, there's the one verse that was basically it. That was the only verse that they came up with for this song. It was actually recorded in 1974. This was, I believe, summer of '74. This was actually at Brian's like worst point. They recorded this song,
Hmm.
and Roger McGuinn, like Riley said, Roger McGuinn came over and they were playing Shortening Bread on the piano, and they came up with this kind of one verse, and Brian was still playing it when he woke up, kind of thing. So it was, Roger had no idea that he got a co-write on it until many years later when he saw his name on the album credits, and it's like, okay, whatever.
Oh no, I was gonna say I love like there's that interview with Roger McGuinn where like he's talking about like the ding dang thing
Yeah,
and he's like whenever Brian sees me now he always goes ding dang. I thought that was really
yeah,
funny like and still remembers like
yeah,
the
yeah.
aberration. Yeah.
And like you guys have said, it's become kind of a meme now to kind of make fun of this song, but it's really just a short interlude. It's not really a really fleshed out song, but it's fun. And I think that putting on all this album, it's another example of the writer's block, but it's also to kind of give it kind of an end to side one, and then you're going to side two, which we'll get into in a bit, which is a little bit heavier than side one. Side one's a little bit more fun, and side two is a little bit more like side two of today, where it's like more like ballad heavy. So
Yeah.
let's get into side two.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to view it. It's like a transition piece. Yeah, like an interlude, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, one other thing too. The way I think Riley, like the way I think it works for me is like this like rocking track is like you got like that little guitar riff at the beginning in the background, like as it fades in, you got that little guitar part, and then the drums come in like right after the piano. I just like it just builds up and then it like launches into the chorus. I love the way it comes in. I think that's what really makes it work for me.
Kind
All
of
right,
faded in, yeah.
yeah, the fade exactly. All right, so now we'll flip the record over and we'll go to side two, where we have, as Justin said, we have more of like a ballad heavy sound here. So starting off side two, we have Solar System. So this is, again, another Brian Wilson track. And this one was the track that took the longest to grow on me on this album. I could not get past I don't want to say it's necessarily the vocal, but it definitely didn't help. I think it's more so I kind of had a hard time getting past just the verse melody. It didn't really do anything for me. But over time it's grown on me, and now I do really enjoy it a lot. I think the lyrics are really quirky and fun. Like the line, if Mars had life on it, I might find my wife on it. Pluto is too far to see, or just, this is a lot of fun lyrics on this song. For me, the highlight is the bridge, like the constellations are stars that form animals. That's the highlight for me, for sure. But I do really like it a lot. I like the keyboard sound effects. I'm sure Justin, you can go a little more into some of the sounds going on this track, but I do really like the production, like the arrangement on it, and I think it works good. So I wouldn't say it's a highlight of the album for me, but I do really enjoy it a lot. So I come back to it pretty often. What do you guys think of Solar System?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Again, very quirky. I think my favorite line is the "If Mars had life on it, I might find my life on it."
Yeah.
It's an interesting song. I don't know if I would have put it as the start to side two, though. I don't know if that's the best way to start side two, but I enjoy it for what it is. It's pretty quirky. It's pretty, again, I think Brian was taking astronomy classes at UCLA or something. So, like, that's where kind of the thing was cut, like, the inspiration for the song came from. And it definitely is a great one to put on a space playlist. I think it'd be interesting to be on there. So yeah, I enjoy it for what it is. It's not my favorite on the record though, by any stretch of the means.
Yeah, this is one of those tracks I just don't like. I usually I can kind of tell with a song, like I could see potential in it growing on me. This is not one of those songs. It's the "What do the planets mean?" just throws me off right
Yeah,
away. And
yeah.
I feel like the the synth is too bright. It sounds like a harpsichord, and then you have a really quirky vocal. Um, I feel like the lyrics are just too out of this world. It's just I don't know. I don't think I really want to like this one too. Like I really like astronomy. I'm like into that shit, but I can't stand this song. I'm not gonna lie. This is maybe the low light on here for me. I don't see any hope for this song growing on me. I can appreciate the synth work as I do with pretty much every track on here, but I don't like it. Not my thing. It's not take a load off your feet bad, but it's like there's nothing that like, you know, I just don't like the song, but I'm not gonna say like it's terrible. I just don't like it.
I think for me, I kind of felt the same way as Riley too when I first heard it. The way he performs the vocal, it's like really over the top, and the lyrics are kind of cheesy. And the heavy delay on his voice is just really out of this world, kind of over the top kind of thing, I guess. And for many years, I didn't even listen to this track at all. Like I'd skip over to the next track, and it was only like maybe after 5 or 6 years of having this record that I actually finally sat down and listened to the whole thing. Like I think I caught it a couple times when it like the needle dropped down. Oh, if life had Mars on it, my life had Mars on it, or whatever that line, which is kind of funny. And I wonder what Marilyn thought of that at the time, but we'll never know. And the other cool part about this track is the cool synth lines. Like there's that kind of like that
Yep.
intro to the second verse or something. And yeah, I think if you take some time and let it grow on you a little bit better, it comes to life. But it's not one of my favorite tracks on the album. I'm gonna admit that. And I don't think it would have should have started side two. I think it would have fit better somewhere else. Just because it is not really a strong track, in my opinion. But it's a decent track, and it's kind of a weird. There's a couple different stories going around on how this lyric came to be, or the song came to be. There was one interview where he said he was in his car and he wrote it when he was waiting for Carney one time. Then one time he said he was standing in front of a stained glass window, and it was the solar system, and he was writing it that way. I think a lot of these tracks at this time too, and we have different stories from people around the Beach Boys that Lane he was using like a lot of pressure tactics to get Brian to write anything. Like it doesn't matter what it is. Um, and there's like actual like bodyguards like standing over him like write a song now like with a baseball bat kind of thing. So like it's pretty crazy. And it's just when you think of him writing Solar System and a guy with a baseball bat like in front of him, like you better write this song or else. Like it's kind of a weird surreal image. But apparently that's how it was according to some people that were around the band at the time. Yeah, so not one of my favorite tracks, I must admit.
Yeah, I feel like this song too. Like I've heard versions where like I heard a version where they took out the lead vocal and it's just the backing arrangement. Like I think somebody isolated it on like YouTube or something. And I feel like you can really appreciate like the musical
Interesting, yeah.
element, or
Yeah.
sometimes without the vocal. Again, I'm fine with the vocal. I think it's kind of charming and fun in a way, but like I can definitely see why it puts some people off. But if you've never heard like that version, look up like Solar System backing track on YouTube to any of our listeners. I think you might enjoy it a little more if you hear it in that way. Also, like I've heard some piano versions of this song as well, where it's really just like the chords, and I think you can really appreciate the musical elements of this song more in that way too. I think musically it's actually really good. I
It
just
is.
think that arrangement, this vocal over that arrangement, it's just a very interesting combination that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So I can see like Riley, like why this one you have a tough time with it. I don't think it like the opening is definitely off-putting. Like what do the planets mean? And have you ever seen? It's like he's singing in such a weird way, you know. So, but I think it's fun. So, all right. So now we'll move on to track 2 on side 2. And this was the first song on the album that really clicked with me. I can remember loving this song even before like really getting into the album. And I think for a lot of people, this is the highlight of the album or one of the highlights. So The Night Was So Young. This is just an excellent song. A really great lead vocal from Carl. I've heard it's kind of weird because parts of this, it almost doesn't sound like Carl, because it's Carl kind of singing in a different like register from usual. Like it's very low,
Lower,
especially
yeah,
like the
yeah.
verses. But it's a great vocal. Love the arrangement. You do have like that little like guitar part, like the night was so young, and everything still didn't. Like I love that little guitar part. And then like that part where all the like the vocals come in, like the whole backing vocals, like the is somebody gonna tell me why she has to high? Like I love that whole part. Again, I don't know if it's the most complex song necessarily. It does kind of just repeats the that part over and over again. It just kind of does the verse, second part, and then first verse, second part over and over. But I really love it a lot. I think it's great. I think it's definitely one of the highlights of the album. I think it's amazing. So, what do you guys think of The Night Was So Young?
Yeah, it's an amazing song. It's beautifully sung. It's beautifully written. The lyrics are simple, but they're very poignant and touching. And I love when Carl and Brian sing together on the the bridge part where it's like the why she has to hide. I've got a car and you're not too far. Yeah, I really, really love this song. This is a wonderful this and then the next 2 songs I think form like a nice little like suite. I really love this song.
Yeah, this is one of the highlights for me. I really enjoyed this one. Carl's vocal really sells it, and that Jake stole my line because I was going to mention that little guitar part. I think adds is like a really nice touch to the song. Um, and the whole progression is what I really like about a lot of Brian's chord progressions. I mean, some of them might be like simple at face value, but then he kind of takes it into a really almost unexpected direction with some of these, with most of his songs. And that's kind of where Brian's charm really is in songwriting. He kind of puts it in a place where you don't really expect it to go. And in a simple song like this, that's just kind of super laid back and chill, like uh the very I kind of forgot how it goes at the very end of the verse, but da-na-na-na, da-da-na-na-na, da-da.
Please let me come over to you.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
it's just like taking a simple chord progression and just kind of putting in a place you don't really expect it to go, and I really appreciate that. And even like Matt said, there's not like anything crazy going on with the song. It kind of repeats itself, but it has that similar to Mona. It's just it has that charm and it keeps you going with it, even though I mean there's not anything crazy that keeps changing up in it. Really beautiful song.
Mhm.
Like you guys said, this is one of the highlights of the album for me as well. I really love the organ. It's like kind of the backing of the song. That's actually the Baldwin organ that he used on Smiley Smile and some of these other
Mm.
uh 67, 68 tracks. It's the same organ. Um, and the drums are also Brian playing. It's a very sparse kind of beat. I don't think there's even a snare drum in it. I think it's just a kick drum and a hi-hat. And the vocals on this track seem like they're like there's a lot more time and care put into them compared to some of the other tracks on the album, the backing vocals I'm talking about. There's sections where Brian almost seems to regain his falsetto in in some of the backing sections. But yeah, I think this song could have been a hit actually. If they would have released this as a single, I could have seen this. I could have seen this doing well on AM radio for sure. And yeah, it's just such a great song, great chord progression. The lyrics are very relatable. Although it was about, I think I've mentioned this before on one of our other podcasts. It was about one of his mistresses at the time, a lady named Debbie Keel, who he actually wasn't that fond of her. She used to come over all the time and basically harass him, and like he had either him or her, Diane or Marilyn after him at the time. So yeah, it was kind of a weird era. What can I
Yeah.
say?
Hey, that's the Beach Boys. There's plenty of weird in the story. So,
Yeah, yeah.
no, but like lyrically, yeah, lyrically, this song and the two that follow it are the songs I connect with the most. Like on this album, like it just feels very personal, and I feel like we can all kind of relate to it. Like you said, Justin, like the feelings being described. Like this, like worrying about like a girl. Like, is she gonna call me back? Does she want to see me again? I feel like we can all relate to that. So, I really love the song. We mentioned this off camera, but I also love the line with the "It's 3 o'clock. I go to my sink. I pour some milk, and I start to think." Like just such like simplistic lyrics, but they work so well. I love the song so much. So
This is
um,
very reminiscent of today as well too. Like I get total today vibes from this track and a couple of the other ones that follow after this.
I totally agree. Totally. So all right. So now we're going to move on to "I'll Bet He's Nice." And for me, this is my favorite song on the album. I absolutely love this song. This is an interesting one because it's got all three Wilson brothers on lead at different points throughout the song. You got Dennis, Brian, and Carl singing parts throughout the song. Again, very like melancholic lyrics. It's about this guy, like basically like like his ex is with another guy now, and he's just like thinking like, oh, I bet he's better than me. I bet he's so much better than me. I bet he's sweeter. I bet he treats you better. And so it's very like melancholic lyric, very sad lyric, but really enjoy the song. Dennis and Brian's rough vocals really sell this. Like you really feel like the emotion of the song because of their vocals. Like they really make it feel very genuine to me. But of course, I gotta say, the highlight of the song is that bridge section when Carl comes in with the "Baby, don't you ever tell me that you're leaving." Like that is honestly one of my favorite vocals like sections in any Beach Boys song. One of my favorite like Carl moments. Period. I just think it's amazing. And again, he does sound. I will say, Justin, like I did feel like you maybe pointed this out before. He does sound a little slurred on it a little bit, like maybe not 100% there, but I think it really sells the song.
Probably
I
drunk.
Yeah, a little drunk, maybe a little under the
Yeah.
influence, but I just think it's a great song. I come back to this one more than any other song on the album. I just think it's fantastic. Can't recommend it enough. So, what do you guys think about Betty's Nice?
I think it's a very touching song. I love that it has all three brothers singing parts. Um, Even though Carl does sound maybe a little under the influence, I think it works for the song or intoxicated or whatever he was.
Yeah,
And I just think it's a song that a lot of people can relate to. It's something that's like, you're kind of mourning the loss of the love, you know. I'll bet he's nice. I'll bet he's twice as nice as me. It's like I thought this was gonna last forever, and now you've moved on. I think it's a very heartfelt lyric, and it's sung very heartfelt too. I think it's sublime, absolutely sublime.
Yeah, this is one of the highlights for me. I think is this and Mona are probably tied for my favorite. But like kind of again, just Brian doing that simple chord progression, like just that half step and then going back down it's kind of shows Brian's genius, and it's a very today-esque chord progression from Brian.
Yeah.
And it's so smart. And I love the song, I love the subject matter. Um, Kind of that like yearning lyrics, kind of desperate lyrics, and then the vocals absolutely sell. My favorite part of the song is the kind of the pre-chorus and then back into the verse. I mean, I really like that bridge sung by Carl, but those verses absolutely sell me on this one in this song. Really enjoy it. One
I
of my
think for me,
favorites.
like Riley, the chords and the structure of the song are really great. I really like there's like a diminished chord in there that's really cool. Um, and Dennis's vocal, like I have to say, like I think both him and Brian are both doubled on this song, so they actually recorded the vocal twice and they panned them together. And the funny line that I like in it that I think a lot, like you guys say, it's really relatable. And when you're dealing with a love loss like that, and you're saying, "I bet he's nice. I bet he's as nice as me," and it makes me cry. Like that's a pretty emotional. It's kind of funny but emotional at the same time, kind of thing. And I think Brian was very raw with his emotions at this time, and he didn't really. I don't know if he didn't care or if he was just willing to put his emotions out there and let them be and let people hear them. And I think a lot of people would be afraid to say something like that, especially nowadays. But Yeah, I really like this song. This is a really, really great song.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that synth work too. The dun 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 dun. That perfect touch. Yeah.
Yeah, the synth work on this song, I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the best uses of synth throughout the album. I think this song is definitely an example of like how why this album works for me. Really, I just think it's incorporated so well into the song. Like, yeah, the part you mentioned, I like the down 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 down. It works really well. Of course, we mentioned earlier as well, like the piano version of this song. You can hear Brian playing it and the other guys listening. And then, when that bridge comes in, like the baby, and Mike's like, "Oh my god!" Like he's just so impressed by it. And again, it shows that like the band, like, even though like people say like oh like maybe the band didn't love everything that Brian was doing around this time, that recording kind of suggests otherwise. Like the guys were clearly blown away by some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a great song. It's as Mike said, it's a motherfucker, and I love it. So
You guys
uh,
mentioned some of those lead synth sounds or whatever. The really cool thing about them is that it's kind of like a call and answer kind of thing. Like one's on one side, one's on the other side, and they kind of
mhm,
just like play off of each other. It's really cool.
yeah. All right, so now we'll move on to the fourth song on side two of Love You, and this is another ballad. This is Let's Put Our Hearts Together. So one of the most notable things with this song, this is a shared lead vocal between Brian and his wife at the time, Marilyn. And I think what makes this song really moving is knowing that like at this time, like Brian and Marilyn were like kind of having relationship difficulties. I think they had been for a while. At the time that this was recorded, obviously with Brian, like with the drug abuse and this, the smoking and just like not being from what he's even said, not a great father to their kids. And so I just think that makes the song really personal that she's on there as well. Musically, I really love it a lot. It's kind of like you said before, Justin, almost like a heartbreaking vocal with heartbreaking lyrics, But actually, in a way, if I'm thinking about it more, it actually is more of an uplifting song in a way too, because it's about like kind of like putting the love back together. So in a way, I think you can interpret it that way, but also knowing what was going on with Brian's relationship at that time, I think it is a little ironic the subject matter. But yeah, I like Marilyn's part when she comes in. I know, like we've said before, like maybe like technically speaking, she's not the greatest vocalist, but I think it works really well in this song. I love the way it ends, like with the together, 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 you and I. Like it's a great way to end the song. So I really like this one a lot. I think it's a great ballad. So what do you guys think of Let's Put Our Hearts Together?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting ballad. It's cool to hear Marilyn's voice. She has a very interesting voice. It's not like the most technically brilliant voice, but I think it works really well. And I know it's like even Brian's voice, is kind of cracking all over the place on this song, but it works. I think it's very heartfelt, especially like I know their marriage wasn't in the best spot at the time, so it's nice to see them kind of come together on this one song, even though I know they would divorce not too long after this. So I really enjoy it. And like I said, I think it like kind of wraps up that nice little three-song suite, like the ballad suite that towards the beginning of side two. So I like it. It's probably I don't like it as much as the two before it, but I still enjoy it for what it is.
Verses on this one are absolutely incredible. I really like Brian's vocal, and I actually think Marilyn's part is arguably better than Brian's. Not maybe not in terms of like vocal quality, but I mean, actually, yeah, probably. But
Yeah.
the that part, like at the end of Marilyn's vocal, where it transitioned to the pre-chorus and chorus, it's so damn good. Um, Chord progression on this one, as with most of the ballads on here, awesome. I actually I really like the chorus, but I the verses on this one just absolutely sell it for me.
Yeah.
It's got that melancholic undertone. It just especially like you guys said, knowing where they were around this time, it kind of adds to it. But it's such a good song. This one's actually been growing on me a lot more lately because I usually kind of dismissed it as like the suite of songs, just kind of as the my least favorite of the three. But I all three of these songs I think about. Well, I'll bet He's Nice is my favorite of the three. I mean, the quality is pretty darn close between all of them for me, and this one's been growing on me a lot. It took a while for me to get used to Marilyn's vocal, but such a
Yeah.
good song.
This one for me was along with Solar System, one that took a while to grow on me. Mainly because of Marilyn's vocal, like Riley said. Um, just because I was unfamiliar with her voice. I knew Brian's voice, even though it was very cracked and stuff, and I guess I was just more used to it. But it's beautiful chord progression, um, really emotive singing. I'm glad that they got to do this together. I know Brian originally didn't plan this as a duet. It was kind of just a solo like just his voice on it, but there was parts where he couldn't reach the notes, and this is when he called on Marilyn because I guess she was the only person around at the time to help him with that. And I think it's just very sweet that they got to be able to do this song together after that many years of marriage and knowing where they were, and it gives you some sort of I don't know, it's just kind of a happy send off, I guess you could say, for them.
Yeah. No, I also love like that opening line. Like it's just a really great like I don't want to tell you that I care for you and have you just ignore me. Like it's just so like
Yeah,
genuine and heartfelt
yeah,
um and then that line too at the end of the verse, I know it may sound funny, but you're the kind of woman who'd make a very sweet wife. Like that's like it's like charming, but also kind of sad and heartbreaking at the same time. But yeah, I really love the song, and yeah, the chord progression is great. This is another one I've heard piano versions of it, and that really made me appreciate the chords of this song. Like it's just really well written. Like if you play this for somebody, like just at a piano, I think they'd be really impressed with it. And then you say that's by the
yeah,
Beach Boys, you know. Um,
yeah.
I think it's great. I love it. All right, so we'll move on to the fifth track on side two. And this is one of the ones that some people tend to have a problem with because of the lyrics, but it's I Want to Pick You Up. So this song is sung mostly by Dennis on the lead. It's the subject matter is a bit questionable for sure. I've seen people that like defend this song. They typically say like, you know, he's talking about um, he's just talking about like, you know, like kids like raising like a baby and stuff. But then like I think Brian had some quote later where he's like, no, it's like viewing a woman like she's a baby, like you just want to pick her up or something like that. So I don't know. There's been some like interesting quotes about this song, but personally, I really like it. I really like the chord progression on it. I really do like Dennis's vocal on it. I think it's a good vocal. Again, not technically speaking, but I think it works well for the song. I love that little section after like the in the morning I will wake you up, feed you breakfast from a little cup. I just think it's a really well written song. Again, lyrics aside, I can see why some people don't like that part of it, but I think musically it's great. Um, I love, of course, at the end to the pat her on her butt, but she's going to sleep. Be quiet. But yeah, I like it a lot. What do you guys think of I Want to Pick You Up?
Yeah, lyrically it's kind of weird. Honestly, I think if you took out that pat part, it's not that bad. Like I could see it interpreted as like, you know, you're like talking about a child or something.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think somebody said you got to apply death to the death of the author here. I kind of agree with that. I enjoy it for what it is, and I do like Dennis's vocal, and I also like the part where it's like "Little baby, go to sleep" at the end of the song. I think that's a really pretty part.
Yeah, yeah.
I enjoy it for what it is, but I can definitely see why people have an issue with it because yeah, it's a little much. It definitely is a little much lyrically, but I enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, for all the songs on here that I don't like, and there is a handful of them, this is the one I actually like the best. Um, but man, patter on her butt ruins it for me. Like I like everything about it. The chord progression is pretty neat. I think Dennis's vocals actually, the vocal itself, not the words he's saying, the vocal itself is pretty good. But the lyrics, man, and I guess it's not even the lyrics. It's I actually kind of enjoyed this one, minus the patter on her butt part, until I read about that Brian thing where it's like, oh, you picking up a woman. It's oh, Brian, you fucked yourself here, bud. Yeah, but yeah, it's like a 5.5, 6 out of 10 song. I because of the patter on her butt part, man. And then that Brian explanation, if he could have said anything else, but he said that. But I don't think I don't think it's anything meant to be
no,
bad. It's
yeah,
not. So I can at least appreciate that. And if you did take out that part I mentioned a couple of times, it would probably be like a 7 for me. But still in there. So I'm not gonna definitely of the songs I don't like on here. This is the one I enjoy the most.
This song, I actually thought it was a baby for many, many years. It was about a baby. But after reading that Brian interview, it totally changed the song for me. But it does have a very beautiful chord progression, very really nice understated production, like along with the rest of the album. Dennis's vocal sells it again. Even though he didn't have the strongest technical voice at this time, like his emotive quality was like at his peak at this point. and the pat 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 on her butt, that kind of always stood out to me, that part, that it was very weird, and it would be better if that wasn't in the song, but it is, so we just have to kind of live with it. And yeah, it's a really decent song when you kind of ignore what he actually wrote it about and think it's just about a baby.
Yeah, and I think part of it too that makes that off-putting is the combination of Dennis's vocal sounding like that with the with the lyrics. But no, I think Dennis's
It's a
voice,
very sweet vocal, like it's like he's singing to
right,
a child. Yeah,
yeah, right. No, I
yeah,
totally agree with you guys though. Like the wash your body and shampoo your hair. Be careful not to sting your eyes. Like there's like a lot of charming parts of it. But it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like that pat her on her butt. And like the thing with that, like it's out of nowhere too. Like it kind of just like you think the song is wrapping up and then it just goes into that. Which the funny thing is, if you look at this album, a lot of the songs are like that. Like Johnny Carson, you had that little outro that kind of comes out of nowhere. You think of
yeah.
a song we're gonna get to here, Airplane. A lot of these songs have these little like outro sections that like you don't really see them coming. So it's kind of an interesting thing I noticed with this album. All right, so we'll move on to track 6 on side 2, and as I mentioned, this is Airplane. So this song I really really like a lot. I think it's great. Mike delivers a really really good vocal on it. I love his vocal. It's like really some people complain around this time like Mike's voice got really nasally, which I do agree with on certain songs, but on this I think he sounds really great. It's really smooth vocal. Very simple lyrics, about traveling on an airplane. I think to see your lover, to see your family. I like the chorus. I like the middle side, like the woman sitting next to me tells me about her guy. I like the progression. And of course it has that fun sing along outro. Like I can't wait to see her face with Brian and Carl, I think. So
Yeah.
I really like the song a lot. Love it's kind of like a sparse arrangement. It's just like the synth in the background and then Mike's smooth vocal, but I really enjoy this one a lot. It's one of the first songs that clicked with me after like The Night Was So Young. So I love it. What do you guys think?
You haven't lived until you've actually played this song while you're taking off from an airplane. Honestly, this one kind of was a grower on me. I didn't really care for it at first. I used to I think one time I got downvoted on the sub saying that I didn't like it very much. But over time, it's really grown on me. I like how it has like the different parts. I like you said, the sparse beginning. I love the I can't wait outro. And I also like the lyric, like this one, I need God as my guide. I really like that lyric. I don't know why, I just really like it. But yeah, it's definitely grown on me a lot. At first, I really wasn't a huge fan of it, but I really do like it now. And honestly, I wish it had ended the album because I think that it would have made a better closer than what did close the album, which I felt was kind of anticlimactic. But we'll get there. But yeah, I really, really enjoy Airplane now. And like I said, if for all you listeners out there, if you haven't listened to it while you take off on an airplane, it's definitely I definitely recommend.
Yeah, when I go to Hawaii this summer, I'll play it before we lift off. Yeah, that's to you, Jake.
No,
Yeah,
Oh,
I
gee.
really like this one a whole lot. And it's compared to the other ones where I said it's like a simple chord progression and Brian takes it somewhere interesting. He doesn't really do that with this one. It is just kind of a basic chord progression. But I feel like because of the production and just the way that the song was arranged, it still works so damn well. But like you said, Jake, it's a simple song with simple chord progression, simple lyrics, a pretty simple vocal, but it works so damn well and it's so good and it really should have ended the album off and I feel like it would have capped off the album perfectly. It's about an airplane, which is kind of what fits the theme of the album with kind of that like innocence and kind of like childlike thing. Um, but it doesn't end the album. It's still so damn good. Yeah, one of my favorites for sure.
Riley, you sparked off a really interesting idea, how it should have ended the album. Uh, Let us go on this way. We're going on this way. Now we're going over the city in an airplane. We're leaving, kind of thing. I think that would have made sense to do that. Um, I really this song when I first heard it, I really didn't click with it. It took a while for me, um, mainly because Mike's vocal was like a little bit too smooth for me when I first heard it. But then when I really focused on the interplay between Mike and Brian, especially with Mike or Brian with the higher parts, like during the or the I don't know if it's the bridge or pre-chorus sections,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then the other thing that really clicked for me was the bass synth at the beginning. Do, 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 do. That's kind of a cool part. And the Baldwin organ makes its appearance on this song as well too, and you can hear that playing the kind of do 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 the stabs, the chord stabs, which is really cool. Um, yeah, now I really like this song, and I think it, like you guys said, it should have closed off the album, and they should have just made it 13 tracks. But that's just my opinion.
I also like, I didn't mention this, but when the second verse starts, like the sound of the engines feels, I like the backing vocals that are like in the, like the, ooh,
And
I really like that a lot. I think that adds a lot. So I really like the arrangement on this one, even though it's very simplistic. And this is another one, like, I just think like, I actually like the verses more than the eventual chorus. I know it's a very brief, like the airplane, airplane, like if that's even what you could,
that, yeah.
but I prefer the verses with Mike. You know, I just think that they're really strong, similar to like I Want to Pick You Up, you know, like very
Yeah.
just a strong verse melody. And this another one. If you listen to versions of it on piano, I think it sounds awesome. Even if it's a simple progression, you can really like appreciate the song. I feel like even if like these Love You synth arrangements aren't for you, so I think it's great.
This is a song that Brian also felt like really proud of, because I know this was one of the first songs he performed in concert off this album. When he eventually did end up going out with the band in December of '76. I think even in November they played some of these tracks too.
Mhm.
It was this one and the next track that was the two ones that he debuted, but he was very proud of this.
Yeah, there's that performance from the Washington D.C. show in I think '77 or '76. But you can hear them doing that song, and I like Brian's vocal on that version because Brian's just like shouting it, like he's not even trying to like sing it smoothly. He's just like screaming the vocal, and I think that's really funny. But yeah, it's one of those songs that they did live. I think they also did "Honking Down the Highway" live at some points. As we mentioned earlier, "Roller Skating Child" was done live to great success, in my opinion. I think it sounds awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a great. I can see why they picked this one to do live. I think it's a cool song. All right, so we'll move on to the album closer, and I think we all kind of agree on this one that it's not the strongest track. I personally think it's not a great way to end the album, but so the song is "Love Is a Woman." This one opens very kind of like Solar System, where the opening can be very off-putting. This one opens with like I think it's like 2 or 3 drum beats, and then just Brian just "Love Is a Woman." Like it's very like abrupt and off-putting, and you know, lyrically, I don't think there's anything too wrong with this one. Although I can see how it could be a little weird to some people. You know, like tell her she smells good tonight. I don't know how many women would be like, "Oh, you smell great." Like, oh yeah, you know. But I really like. I mean, I can get to the charm of the lyrics, but the song itself, I think, is just kind of weak, honestly. Compared to like the songs that preceded, especially like you got Airplane and I'll Bet He's Nice. The Night Was So Young. I just don't like where this song is sequenced on the album as the closer. I don't think it closes it strong. I do the one part of the song I do kind of like. I like the 1, 2, 3. She's fallen in love with me. 4, 5, 6. She fell for all my tricks. I think that's kind of a fun little like memorable section. But besides that, like I don't know, like this song, I like if I'm listening to the album, I'll usually let it play. Like I'm not gonna like I won't like stop it at Airplane. I will let this play, but I do wish that it didn't close with this song because I do think it's easily the weakest track on the album. And it holds it back for me from being like to me personally being a perfect album. I think this song lets it down a little bit, but it's not bad. Definitely not the worst thing they recorded in my opinion. What do you guys think of "Love Is a Woman"?
Yeah, it's I don't think it was like you said, I don't think it's a great way to end the album. I do like there are some good lines in this, and I do like kind of what Brian was going for, but some of them like you said, like the "smell good tonight" is kind of I do love the bridge with Al, though. That definitely is my favorite part. But yeah, I don't know. It's okay. I just don't think it was a very good way to end off the album. I really think if they ended with Airplane, the album would have ended off on a really strong note. I feel like ending off with this, like as I said before, it's a little anticlimactic. I don't hate the song. It's just not my favorite, and I don't think its position on the album was right. I don't think it was sequenced in the right spot.
Yeah, it's definitely more anticlimactic than it is actually bad. I think this and "Honking Down the Highway" are the only songs where I think are just off the album that I truly think are just okay to decent. I think this is definitely worse than "Honking Down the Highway." I definitely prefer that one, but it's not bad. It's just sequenced poorly. I mean, there's something really exciting here for me. I mean, compared to the rest of the songs on side 2 minus Solar System, I feel like the songs are take a very interesting turn with the melody, and this one is just kind of meh. It's all right. It's decent. It's not bad, but Airplane should have closed it, and then I think maybe I would have appreciated it a bit more. But it's all right.
Yeah, I have the same feelings as you guys. This song, like, it's a decent song, but with as strong as an album this is, it should have been left off. They should have just left it unreleased. Like it didn't really need to be done. It's kind of like a doo-wop kind of thing that they had done many times before, but it didn't really offer anything new or anything exciting to it. But it's a decent song. It's not a bad song at all. There is a version that Brian did on SNL that's pretty rough. Has anybody seen it? With the house
Yes.
band, because they didn't really know the song and they're just kind of playing, like learning it as they play it on live TV. It's pretty rough. But I admire Brian for doing that, to put himself out there, because it is really hard. I know as a musician, it's really hard to get up on stage and perform and sing and everything. I get stage fright myself, so
Oh yeah.
I can understand with that. Um, yeah, I don't really have much else to say about it other than it should have been left off the album, but it's there and it's just an extra, I guess.
Yeah, and I have to think Brian was just another one of those songs. I have to think he was somewhat proud of it because he performed it live at shows, I'm pretty sure, as well. Like, not just on TV, but I think that performance of at Washington, I think he does that song as well.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think he must have liked the song enough. I don't think it's a bad song either. I can enjoy it, I guess, but it's just, yeah, compared to the material that it precedes it, I just think it comes off as kind of weak. And like you said, like they've kind of done this before. It just doesn't stand out. And the album was already 13 tracks, like it
Yeah.
had enough material on it for them to just be like, okay, like we can end it with Airplane, so I don't know. So we talked a little bit about some of the leftover tracks or the extra material recorded around this time. One track I just wanted to shout out, and I think one of you guys mentioned it, maybe you did, Justin, that Special Feeling. I would have liked to seen a completed version of that because I think it's got a really catchy melody. I think it's definitely, to me, that's stronger than Love Is a Woman for sure. I definitely would have preferred a version of that Special
Yeah.
Feeling for Love Is a Woman. But yeah, in terms of the extra material, I mean, we can get a little bit more into that, but some songs that I like that Special Feeling. Lazy Lizzy is lyrically kind of a really kind of creepy song. If you interpret it, again, it's like, we don't really know exactly what was going through Brian's mind at that time. So like, we can't really, we kind of just have to assume or guess, but I think melodically it's not terrible. I just think the lyrics are a little bit weird. So I can see why that was left off. Marilyn Rovell was a song you mentioned, Justin. I think that's got a very catchy melody to it. Again, I think the lyrics are kind of ironic because he's singing about like how great his relationship is with her. He's like, people ask like, "What's your secret?" It's like their marriage at that time I don't think was in like a great state. So it's kind of interesting that I don't know when this song was written. Do you know, Justin? Like when he actually composed?
It would have been written during the summer of '76. It would have been written like shortly before it was recorded. So that was August 21st. So probably around like July, early August, I would say.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I mean, yeah, it's just interesting lyrics considering like Brian's personal life at that time. I'm not sure how great it was. Besides that though, not too many of these other tracks. I know you said like My Diane was recorded around that time. We'll get into that more when we get into like MIU. But yeah, I really like that song a lot. And then of course, Hey Little Tomboy, which we're going to get into when we talk about Adult Child. So I'll save my thoughts on that. But
Yeah.
do you guys have any thoughts on some of like this extra material that was like left over or just recorded around this time?
Sherry, She Needs Me. I'm
Oh
sure
yeah.
we can talk about that when we get to whenever we do get to Summer Days. But it's weird because I mean, I really want that 60s vocal on it. Especially want that 60s vocal on it. But for what we got, I could still really greatly enjoy that song. And since there is no real track list to Adult Child on the version I have that I put on my phone, that replaces Hey Little Tomboy for me, and I just plop it right next to the end. So I think it definitely sound-wise, since Adult Child kind of has no real central sound to it, it kind of fits. But I really love Sherry, She Needs Me. It's one of my favorite songs from the band, like period. I think the chord progression is very like I said with a lot of the other stuff, it's very interesting. It takes it in a different place. I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite outtakes by the band, just in general. One of my favorite songs by them.
That backing track is absolutely gorgeous. The Wrecking Crew in 1965. Yeah, this I really like Sherry She Needs Me as well too. Even with the 76 vocal, I think that they should have released it even with that. But I think he just lost interest at the time with that and moved on to something else. Yeah, there's a bunch of different tracks. Ruby Baby isn't that great, the cover that they did. That Special Feelings, okay for me. Hey There Mama, not really into it. We Got a Groove is kind of boring. And the versions that we have thus far of that sounds like the tape has been slowed down, so it's kind of not really accurate. You've Lost That Love and Feelings, okay. It's an okay cover. Lazy Lizzy is really creepy, the lyrics and just I think the recording that we have is because it's like multi generations. It makes it even creepier. Um, yeah, it's not really strong songs. And I think he kind of knew it at the time too because he kind of discarded all these songs because it looks like on August 18th he started the album like he was starting with Ruby Baby and or sorry, August 1st, Ruby Baby and Hey Little Tomboy were the first two tracks cut for that. And then he kind of gave up after that and kind of pushed it aside for a little bit and came up with more tracks after. So maybe that's what happened. I guess we don't know until we get the box set or until a little bit more information comes out. But it's definitely fascinating listening to some of these tracks, but they're not my favorite tracks. They are really weak, and you can see why he kind of left them off.
Yeah. So now, real quick, before we get into, we're going to get into some of the adult child tracks here in a minute. But before we do, I just wanted to go over a couple of reviews involving Love You. There's reviews from the time and then also more recent comments on it. So the one that I know we have to share, because I know, Matt, you love this quote. It's from Lester Bangs, the music critic. And in his review of the album, he said that it was the Beach Boys' best album ever. And he described them affectionately as a diseased bunch of motherfuckers who exhibit a beauty so awesome that listening to them at their best is like being in some vast dream cathedral decorated with 1,000 gleaming American pop culture icons. So, yeah, that diseased bunch of motherfuckers, like what a quote. And like when you look at some of the pictures of the guys around this time, I think it makes that quote even funnier. You know, like you got Brian like with his scruffy look and Dennis, you know, you got like Brian shirtless on the back of the cover of the album. So it's just a funny quote, but I think it kind of like sums up like the image of the band to I think people at the time, you know.
Even Al was looking pretty haggard at the time. He was like growing out.
A couple other quotes. There was another reviewer that called it a flawed but enjoyable comeback for Brian, and he thought that the compositions were really strong, even if the singing wasn't what like we're usually used to from the Beach Boys. Of course, also another interesting quote from Patti Smith. Patti Smith really liked this album, the musician. And it's kind of an interesting thing because like you wouldn't necessarily associate her music with the Beach Boys. She's more of like kind of like that punk sound almost, but she submitted a review of the album that was kind of like a poem style, so it's very interesting to read. But she clearly liked the album a lot, and she seemed to really enjoy it. So I thought that was kind of cool, like hearing like other musicians praise this album. Let's see. In terms of a couple of negative reviews, one reviewer called it a real disappointment, patronizing and disastrous, the kind of record to get out of a contract with, and that they have done. And then there are some people that criticized that critics were like writing inauthentic positive feedback just to like kind of like like encourage Brian or like motivate Brian, like, oh, like Brian's back, he wrote all the songs, this is great, when in like reality like maybe like it's not as strong as they're making it out to be. Personally, I mean, again, I really enjoy the album, but like I'm not going to argue with anybody that has a problem with it or thinks it's a very strange album. Like it's definitely not an album that I would listen to with like if I have like friends in the car with me or honestly even my own family. Like, it's just so out there, and I would love this. I'd be very interested to see their reactions to it, but I don't think they'd be positive. So I tend to kind of just, it's one of those albums I listen to by myself, but I just really enjoy it. So.
I think of another funny thing about the reviews at the time, because I'm doing the research for my book on the Brian's Back era, and I think I posted it on the subreddit to the first Love You review that I could find was a UK review, I think it was March. It was before the album was released. They got a promotion copy. This I can't remember which paper it was, but the guy was like so in love with it. Like it was just unbelievable that this was the first Love You review. It's just like the guy was over the moon about it. Just like this is the best Beach Boys album in years, and like it would go on to be like maligned over the next like few months. But the first guy loved it, so
Yeah.
it's kind of funny.
I think I remember when you posted that. I think I read that actually.
Yeah. I can't remember the exact paper. It was just some like fly by night paper. It wasn't like a major paper.
One other thing too with like reviews about this album that like some that has been pointed out is that like typically there was kind of a divide between like what fans thought of the album versus what critics thought of the album, because I think like critics could really kind of appreciate like the musical elements of this, whereas like fans hearing this, because like a lot of like Beach Boys fans, especially like casual fans, like they have a certain type of sound that they're expecting, like you think of like all those 60s hits that are so like really clean and well produced, and the harmonies are so pretty and like well arranged, so like even for people that had like were familiar with albums like Holland or Surf's Up, Sunflower, even to like people that knew those albums, I'm sure like this was definitely kind of a shock, in terms of the sound. Again, I know 15 Big Ones preceded this, and that wasn't necessarily the strongest record. You also had kind of like that synth sound on that album as well. So that does kind of precede this in a way, but still though, I can definitely see like why like fans at the time were like, oh boy, like this is really weird. And I can see why this album struggled to chart high, I think, where did it chart? Like 50 or number 60?
It was 53 in the US. Yeah. Which is
so
it's not the worst, but it's pretty bad for a major group.
Also coming off the top 10 with 15 Big Ones, that was it was not good.
In the single to not even chart, that's pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, Honking Down the Highway didn't even chart. That's right.
That's probably why Mike was so open, I think, to do like the synthesizer stuff with Love You, was because 15 Big Ones charted pretty well.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so he is probably super open to the sound. And then when this didn't do well, that's probably why when you get to Adult Child, he's like, no, we're not releasing this.
Yeah, 15 was actually charted better in the US and the UK, which was different. Most of their albums around the 70s charted better in the UK than the US.
By a lot.
Well, what Riley's saying like actually makes sense, because by the time he comes back to the US, it would have been after the Honking Down the Highway single was released. So he would probably see that, okay, it's not charting. Like we got to do something different here.
Back to the formula.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then lastly, one more thing I wanted to mention before we get to Adult Child. A couple of comments from the band members on this album. So Brian, of course, has said multiple different albums over the years are his favorite, but he has been quoted as saying that Love You is his favorite Beach Boys album before. There's an interview with him from 1996 where he said, "That's when it all happened for me. That's where my heart lies. Love You. Jesus, that's the best album we ever made." And then in another interview, he said, "My favorites are I Want to Pick You Up and Ding Dang," which I thought was funny. Those are Brian's.
Wow. Okay.
Those are Brian's top tracks on the album. And then also he was asked in 2009 about like what records in the Beach Boys catalog he thought were underrated. And the tracks that he mentioned from this album were Ding Dang, Johnny Carson, The Night Was So Young, and I'll Bet He's Nice. So, I mean, yeah, those last two, I think a lot of people would say yes, but those first two, I'm not so sure. But, that's cool that Brian really enjoys those tracks looking back at them. I feel like we got to mention Mike Love's comments on this album. He said in 2016 that the album was undeniably original, but fragmented and just plain odd, which, I mean, he's not wrong. It's original, it's different, but it's also very different and odd. So I can see why he felt that way and why he said that. And then an interview from Al Jardine. Al expressed enthusiasm for performing the entire Love You album in concert, and he said that those are some of the best songs we ever did. So even though like in recent, I know like at the time, like people, there's this view that like, Al was kind of more against the creative side of the band. Al was more about like, let's just tour and make money, like we're not as worried about like making these albums, like these really deep albums. Obviously though, his opinion on Love You is really high. Like he really likes a lot of that material. And I know they've done Honking Down the Highway live before. Like Al's band has done it. And I think maybe a couple of too. So yeah.
He put Honking Down the Highway, I think, in a solo record, right?
Yes, he did. That's right. Yep. Which is really cool. Yeah. So obviously it's cool that like Al looks back at these tracks fondly,
Alex Chilton did a version of Honking Down the Highway too, but he changed some of the lyrics. Actually, he changed quite a bit of the lyrics.
Yeah, I heard it. It's okay, but I wouldn't listen to it again. Yeah. Alex from Big Star. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I think it's time to get into Adult Child now. So Justin, do you have anything else you wanted to add about Adult Child or anything else you wanted to mention, or should we get right into it?
Just that it's a really odd period. We don't really know too much about it. From my research, what I've been able to kind of gather together about the album, uh, there's not really much information about Adult Child. There's an information about an album being recorded, just with an unknown name. Carl and Dennis both mentioned it in interviews at the time. And Carl was really enthusiastic about it, saying that it's Brian's best work for years and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the first mention of Adult Child that I could find was an article. I can't remember it was a music trade magazine, but it was after it was assembled. Would have been July or August of 77, and it said that Warner Brothers rejected the album. Now, we don't know if that's true or not. That's what this music trade magazine said. I don't know the exact one at the moment, but it is in my book that's coming out eventually. And then also the other mention of Adult Child that I found at the time was in a Beach Boys fanzine. They mentioned that this Adult Child was coming out the next few months. That was all that was said. There wasn't really any like track list or anything like that. Yeah, and so it's like kind of a concept that's kind of shrouded in mystery. Was it actually an album? Was it actually uh like planned out, or is it something that was just kind of assembled quickly and kind of given to the record company? Did the record company reject it? Did Mike Love reject it? Did Al reject it? We don't know. Like there's not really a lot of information about it, but it's kind of given a lot of fans kind of fun, like going back and forth. Okay, what if this song was on it? What if this song was on it? And for me, the first time I heard these tracks, there was a couple bootlegs put out. The one that I had was the one from the early '80s. I think it was like '83 or '84. I think they were actually in Canada. There was a record company called Making Waves. It was kind of an illegal venture, and they released a whole series. They released the Christmas, 77 Christmas album. They released that. They released Landlocked. I had the whole set of them. I don't even remember where I got them, maybe online or something. But and then when I was sold off my record collection, the guy that I sold those to, he's like, what? He didn't even know what they were, and I just told him like they're bootlegs or whatever. They're just like unreleased tracks, and he was so excited that because he had never seen them before, the guy. So I just thought that was kind of funny, but they were really rough quality too, those albums. But that Adult Child was later released as that everybody, the image that everybody sees of Brian in the fireman's hat. That was the later bootleg. Yeah, that was 87 or 88 that came out, that one.
I like how on the back of that it says Brian's back, and it's got a big cut. I don't know if that's actually back. I don't think it is.
It's not. No,
it's very funny. I love that.
Yeah.
All right, I guess let's dive into the Adult Child material. So the first track on this wasn't officially released, but on the proposed version of this album on side one, we have "Life Is for the Living." So this is a very interesting track. It's kind of like a swing big band sound to it. It has an interesting vocal from Carl. He sounds a little intoxicated or under the influence again. Again, kind of like shouting at certain points, I think, especially at the end. But it's a fun enough song. I don't think it's anything musically too complex. I think it's just kind of like your usual, like kind of like swing, jazzy number. I do like the little bridge section or the middle section with Brian, like the sit-ups and push-ups, And then, of course, at the intro line, the sit around on your ass, smoke some grass. That stuff went out a long time ago. It's just such a quirky song, such a weird song in their catalog. But I think it's fun. I enjoy it. But if this was released, I don't know what people would think of it. It's definitely out. So what do you guys think of "Life Is for the Living"?
Yeah, it's definitely out there. You can kind of start hearing like that big band influence. It's got an interesting vocal. It's got a nice melody, but it's definitely weird. Like I think that a lot of this stuff is weirder than the stuff on "Love You."
I agree.
I really like it. I really like the big band sound. I know it's pretty inconsistent on the album, though. I really wish that they could have done a full album of big band material. I feel like it really would have worked for them. I really enjoy Carl's vocal. I feel like here, the weirdness on this track and some of the other tracks on here actually work for me a lot more than it does on Love You. But it's again like there's not a really consistent there's no really consistency with this thing. So it's really hard for me to really enjoy the album completely as a whole. But this track I really enjoy. I really like the lyrics. I like Carl's vocal. I like the sit-ups and push-ups part. That part does it for me. This is a similar thing to Let Us Go on Our Way. It's a great opener. I don't really listen to it too much on its own, but as an opener, it works fantastic, and I really like it. So
This song is weird. I don't think it ever would have been released the way that we hear it today. I think they would have fixed a couple things in it first, but it's rough. It's pretty rough. Carl's vocal is he's drunk. You can tell. It's pretty rough. The backing track's great. I love the swing backing track. The arrangement is great. Sinatra would have done a phenomenal job with this
oh
song.
yeah.
Yeah. But it's really rough. I think that and the mixing's pretty rough. But as an unreleased kind of curiosity, it's a pretty decent track. But if you're looking at this as like a released track, it's pretty rough.
Oh, I was gonna say I really like the part where like the drums break down.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's fun.
so fucking cool.
Yeah.
You-
That's like peak swing music. That and I think Justin said I could totally see Sinatra doing this song. Life is for the living. Or like Seth MacFarlane on a Family Guy episode.
There you go.
I wonder what Sinatra would think of the next line, though. Don't sit around in your ass.
Don't sit around on your
Yeah,
ass, smoking grass.
Yeah, no, but I do enjoy the song though. Like I think it's a lot of fun. I don't think like it probably is. There's probably a reason this wasn't released, but I can definitely enjoy it, especially in the context like
It's
this album.
absolutely a sequel to Love You, and some areas it works better, in some areas it doesn't.
Yeah, the
Another
part at the
fun
end,
thing to think about is what if this was a Brian solo record? Because that was a possibility at the time too. Like Dave Burson that worked for Warner Brothers at the time, they asked him like, why is Brian allowed to do a solo record? And he said, we've given him opportunities to do solo records. Like we're not stopping from doing any solo records. And then Brian's saying, oh, well, Warner Brothers isn't giving me the opportunity to do solo records. So it's like kind of a communication breakdown, but I think that they would have let him do something like this as a solo release.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. And I think it would have made more sense than as a Beach Boys release.
All right, so we're gonna move on to track 2 now, and track 2 on the proposed adult child track list is "Hey Little Tomboy." So this is another Brian Wilson composition. In terms of this song, I think I've kind of shared my thoughts on it on previous episodes. I think melodically, I think it's actually really good. I think it's really catchy and fun. It gets stuck in my head all the time. Honestly, I think it's just really catchy. Unfortunately, the lyrics are what they are. They're disturbing and creepy. And I mean, honestly, in a way, I think I've said this before, but like the lyrics are so bad. I almost like, they're so bad, they're good. Like I almost enjoy like the song in an ironic way. Just like, God, these are stupid lyrics. Like just the opening, like, sit here on my lap. I've got things I've got to tell you. No more skateboards. Put away your baseball bat. It's like, oh my fucking God. Like, this is such a nightmare, especially like today, like this is not a song that the band wants like becoming popular, or like wants TikTok to find or something because it's a nightmare lyrically. But I think it's great melodically, and because of that, I still listen to it. It doesn't really, the lyrics are creepy, but honestly, at this point, I've heard it enough. I just enjoy it. So I get why people hate it though. It's definitely creepy. So what do you guys think of Hey Little Tomboy?
Yeah, it has a catchy melody, and I do like some of the vocals. Like I actually like how like Carl's singing on it, but the lyrics are kind of creepy, and I actually think the adult child version is worse in that regard because it has like that weird spoken word part that thank God they mixed that out when actually released the damn thing. It's way worse. So I've always really liked the melody. It's just those lyrics are, and it's way worse than Roller Skating Child, I think, lyrically. But like I said, I do love the melody. I do like the vocals.
Terrible lyrics, pretty good melody. Of all the tracks they decided to release officially, I'm not sure why this was the one. There's a lot of tracks on this supposed album that they could have cut for MIU. Yeah, they chose this one.
Yeah, this track, who's it? Gary Griffin talked about this track actually recently. Because they asked him, like, did anybody think that these lyrics were weird at the time or the song was a weird song at the time? And he said, no, we were so excited about this song because of the chord progression and like it was just a really fun melody. And at the time, they didn't think these lyrics were weird. That's what he recently said. But I know at the time that I first heard this song on MIU, it was a weird song. But and like Matt said, I'm glad they mixed out the spoken word because it's just absolutely fucking crazy. I no words for it. I'm just glad that was mixed out.
Let's put a little dress on and wear a little makeup. God almighty. Also I love the part like the you can find new places to go, whoa, whoa. You can see that place, love you so, whoa, whoa. And then Carl with the
It's fun,
time
yeah,
to turn into a girl.
yeah.
I saw some other podcast or somebody said like that Carl part would be so good if he was singing literally anything else other than what he's singing, because it is a
Yeah.
great that vocal. It's just the song.
It's
The
very
lyrics.
passionate too.
Yeah, he's giving
Yeah,
it his all on it. Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so moving on to track 3 on Adult Child. So this is a cover of the song Deep Purple, which I believe was originally recorded in the early 60s, I want to say. I think it's like, what is it, like Nino Tempo or something like that. I forgot the name. It's a duet though. I actually really like this cover a lot. It's one of my favorite tracks on the proposed Adult Child track list. And I think what does it for me is the arrangement combined with Brian's vocal. Brian's vocal, again, like technically speaking, maybe it's not the strongest, but I think it really sells the song. It makes it sound very like moving and almost desperate to me. It's like he's reminiscing on like a past love that failed. I think that this version is miles above the original version, which is more of this like poppier, upbeat song. It doesn't have any like emotional impact on me whatsoever, but this version really, really moves me. Really, honestly, Brian kind of made it his own song because it doesn't really sound like the original. It has its own distinct arrangement. I think it was it the Four Freshmen arranger on this one too? I forgot if he did this one or not, but I thought
I
a couple
believe
of
so. I believe so.
for Dick
Don't
Reynolds.
quote me on that, but I believe so. Yeah,
It
Yeah,
is. It
no,
it is.
yeah, yeah.
okay, but I just really love the arrangement and I love Brian's vocal, and I think it's just a really pretty song, so I really enjoy it. What do you guys think?
It's solid. It's a little on the syrupy side for me, but it's a solid cover. And like you said, I know Brian's vocals are a little scratchy, definitely a bit. But it's an interesting song for sure.
I really enjoy this one. It sounds nothing like the original at all. And I think that it's way better. Even though it doesn't sound big bandy in terms of production, I feel like the choices for I guess the way he arranged it still sound, I guess, big bandy, kind of that. I can hear Sinatra singing this. Um, I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite tracks on this, I guess, album. Absolutely incredible. And I feel like Brian's vocal is actually really good on it. I feel like compared to a lot of the raspiness that we kind of got a couple of years prior, I feel like his voice is finally kind of getting back to where it was in some sense. And I feel like it totally works on this song. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, this song it's a pretty good song for me. I actually have never heard the original, so I don't know how the original sounds.
Yeah.
But it is like Riley said, like it's not really big band kind of arrangement. It's more of like a contemporary. It feels very 70s at the same time. It has that phase guitar in it. And Brian's vocal like you guys both said, or all of you guys said, it's just really great performance that he did on this. So this is a pretty decent track. It probably could have been released at one point on one of the albums. I just don't know where it would fit. That's the only problem.
LA.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
LA, yeah, maybe.
I don't know like who the original like composer was for this, like who wrote the lyrics, but like I think they're really good lyrics. They work well with Brian's vocal as well. Like the like in the midst of her memory, you wander back to me, breathing my name with a sigh. Like it really works, and I love the arrangement and the part where like Brian's vocal cuts out and it's just like the backing track, like the orchestral arrangement. I think that's a really pretty part too. I love this song. I come back to it a lot. It probably the most of all the Adult Child material. Honestly, that's how much. Well, maybe
Yeah.
second. All right, so now moving on to track 4. This is a odd one. This is Help is on the Way, or HELP is on the way. This is another track that originated from around like 1970, I think, right around like the time of like Sunflower. This is another one of those songs that kind of deals with like Brian kind of went through like this like health food craze where like he's obsessed with like exercising and being healthy, which is ironic because Brian really wasn't like at the time he wasn't really following his own advice.
Yeah.
But this is I like this song. I think it's quirky in a kind of a fun way. I don't come back to it too often, to be honest. It's one of those songs I kind of have to be in the mood for. So like if it comes on shuffle, I might skip it. But I think it's enjoyable enough. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. What do you guys think of Help Is on the Way?
Yeah, this has really weird lyrics and enema, stomach pumps, and all that stuff. It's all right. I I wouldn't have had an issue if this just stayed in the vault forever. It's just very weird, and it's just I don't even know what they were trying to do on this song. I don't know. It's odd. It's very, very odd.
It's fun.
Yeah. Not as fun as Take a Load Off Your Feet, though.
Oh my god, it's way more fun than Take a Load Off Your Feet.
I think we talked about this song when we were talking about Sunflower and Surf's Up, I believe. But
Yes.
yeah, it's an okay song. It's not my favorite. This was a song that was written about, I think I also mentioned before about that restaurant that they used to go to, HELP. It's kind of a health food restaurant. And it was kind of a way to give their friend business. They that's why they wrote this song, and they were preparing to release it. I don't know if as a Beach Boys on a Beach Boys album, maybe it's just as a single or as like a promotional jingle or something. But I think it should have stayed in the vault. It's not really anything like super amazing, and it's not doesn't really give us anything different than like it's not like unique at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now on to track 5 on Adult Child, we have the ballad. It's Over Now. So this one is a really haunting, moving ballad to me. I will say I can't really comment too much on the original mix of this because I don't really listen to it much. It's like very like Carl sounds very slurred on it. It's like slower. I don't know, Justin. Maybe you can go into that a little bit. But I listened to like the more like edited. I think it's like a sped up version of it on that they released on the Made in California box set. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That version I really do like of this song. Really a heartbreaking song, honestly, lyrically. Again, like knowing where Brian was at that time, like his marriage was falling apart. And this is one of those songs I personally really connect with. You know, like it's one of those songs where like if you're going through a breakup or like a relationship falling apart, like it's really moving lyrically. The part where Marilyn comes in, like the heaven is far away, that really moves me too. And again, it's kind of got like that arrangement, like that kind of like that big band or whatever, however you want to describe it. It's got that similar kind of arrangement. And I think it works really well. I will also say Brian's piano demo version of this from I think like 76 or 77. That's really heartbreaking too. Honestly, I think much more heartbreaking than the actual release song. But I do think the song is good in its adult child form as well with Carl on vocal. I just don't really know what's with that original version though, where Carl sounds very like slurred. I don't really know what the story is behind that. But Justin, you can maybe get into that. Matt, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, it's very emotional. It's very heartbreaking. I really like Carl's vocal on it, though I do think that I believe the version on the box set was slowed down because it sounds like he's slurring throughout the song, but I think that was like a problem with the tape speed. I think they fixed that on one of the later boxes. But yeah, it's a very emotional song. It's very heart-wrenching, and I definitely could have seen maybe like a Sinatra or someone like that sing this one.
Yeah, this is absolutely an incredible song. I feel like this is one of the best songs on this from the material right here. The part where it took a part of me, the heart of me, to watch it fade away. Holy shit, it's such a beautiful song, and the vocals on it is absolutely incredible. And this is another one where it's like you really hate a little tomboy, but not this. It's holy shit. And again, you could. I feel like with this album, like where Love You was kind of Brian reaching back to his teenage years of Spectre and just kind of all that stuff. I feel like in some ways this album, or at least the big band stuff, is him kind of rekindling his love with the Four Freshmen and Sinatra and Rhapsody in Blue with that kind of style of music. Where like I said, with the teenage years and Love You, this is kind of going back 10 more years to maybe like the early 50s, late 40s.
This is what he was listening to at the time. He was listening to a lot of Sinatra and a lot of those like Who else was he saying? Nelson Riddle was another name that he said in an interview that he really liked. Um, yeah, this is a really interesting, fun. Or I shouldn't say fun. It's an interesting, really like it. It's a really nice ballad. The mix is crappy in the original version, as you guys mentioned. It's the tape was slowed down, and also Carl is drunk as well on the vocal, so it makes him sound like extra slurry. I think if the song was released properly, he would have redone his vocal, just because he was drunk, and and like with him, he was going through a really rough period in his life too, because he was going through his divorce with Annie at the time, and he had a lot of issues with his back as well, still from 1976. So just a lot of stuff going on in his life as well too. So we'll get into a little bit more over the next few album episodes when we get a little bit further into MIU. But yeah, it's a really emotional, heartfelt song, and I'm glad that we were able to kind of remix it a little bit over the years and to kind of fix some of the tape speed issues with that, because it made it sound, although it did make it sound a little bit more haunting than it actually was supposed to sound with the slower tape speed. So um yeah, but I think it sounds technically better with the new mix.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to mention too, like I know like people point out that like Brian wasn't necessarily the greatest like lyric writer, but like I think the lyrics on this are just like incredible.
Yeah.
They kind of like, like Till I Die, where like, one of those songs where like he wrote all the words, and like it's just a phenomenal set of lyrics with a great song. Like with
Yeah.
it's I think of the line too, I played the role, I lost my soul, it's still within your heart. Like that's a
Yeah.
great, this is a really good lyric. It showed like
It is
when
a
Brian,
really good lyric.
in a way, I almost feel like when Brian was in a bad like state of mind, like mentally, or like in kind of a funk or a depression, I almost feel like he wrote some of his strongest lyrics, because you look at Till I Die as well, So sometimes I feel like the emotion that inside of you can really bring out like that creative, that energy, or you can really get your feelings across through your words. So I really love that song a lot. Definitely, I would say top 3 for me on Adult Child. So all right, so now we're going to move on to a more lighthearted, fun track. This is Everybody Wants to Live. Uh,
Oh
so the
yeah.
so this one, it's kind of like a fun like piano song. It's got like a catchy little piano riff, like dun 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 dun. It's got a very catchy riff. The opening line always makes me laugh, like Carl with the a cigarette, but when you throw it in the water, it goes. I always laugh at that.
Yeah.
It's really funny. It's a catchy song. I don't think musically it's not like the most complex. I don't think it's like a very strong song musically. I think it's kind of just whatever, but I do personally enjoy it a lot. Like when I listen to like mixes or versions of Adult Child, I always enjoy this one. I think it's fun. I think the piano riff is a lot of fun. So what do you guys think of Everybody Wants to Live?
Yeah, it's really bouncy. It's fun. I like the vocals on it, and I really like the drum sound as well.
I really love it. A lot. I like the everybody just wants to live just once. Everybody's got to see it that way. That little chord progression is so awesome. Again, the big band stuff on here is so damn good, and all of it wasn't released. But you know what was? Hey Little Tomboy. And you
Yeah.
have so much good shit. And like My Diane kind of fits like I guess like melodically like with this stuff. So you can release My Diane on MIU. There's no reason why you can't release any of this shit. And I feel
Yeah.
like the lyrics on this aren't even questionable. So I don't see why like none of this made it to MIU, but Hey Little Tomboy did. Like it
Yeah.
makes no sense to me because this song is so good. It's so catchy. I know it's a bit simple, but I think it's just so catchy and it's so awesome. And I can also see Sinatra singing this. And it's like I want a whole album of big band stuff from them. And freaking release it, and they released Hey Little Tomboy, and it just makes no sense at all.
I think Riley hit it on the head there with it's like really simple, but it's really catchy, the song. And it should have made MIU. This song, It's Over Now, and Deep Purple should have made it past this album. Uh, Albeit in like more of a finished form. Maybe some of the vocals redone, but even this song, like I really like the vocals in it. They're actually pretty decent. Even though it is a very rough mix, but yeah, it's a really simple and catchy song. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll re-record Hey Little Tomboy,
Yeah.
right? Did they re-record it? They do that. They work on it more.
Right, they worked on it.
They couldn't work on this a bit more. They couldn't work on some of the other ones this more. And there's another one later that we'll get to that I really, really love. And holy shit, it just makes no sense. It makes no sense. Because there's some material on here. Like, yeah, I wouldn't release it. But then there's this. There's Deep Purple. There's freaking, what was the one we just talked about? It's Over Now. And no, not going to release it. No, we're just going to keep it in the vaults and let it rot. It just makes no sense.
And instead released Time to Turn Into a Girl. All right, so we'll move on to side 2 of Adult Child. And the first track is Shorten and Bread. So I know we've already discussed this a bit, but this is, I think, I would say this is my favorite version of it that the Beach Boys did. I think it bounces along really nicely. This is one of those songs. It's funny because the more I listen to it, the more I get Brian's obsession with it. Like, I'm like, yeah, this is a fun progression. Like, I can see why Brian digs this so much. This version makes me laugh a lot just because, like, I love, like, the combination of, like, Brian's, like, kind of, like, goofy sounding, like, bass vocals, like the Mama's Little Baby Love Shortening. And then you got Carl just freaking screaming, like, during this track, like, at the end. Like, he's like, yeah. Like, I laugh at it because Carl's like giving it his all on this, like, you know, kind of just like basic traditional song. And I just think it's so funny. So I really enjoy this. I think it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't say I come back to it too often, but like when it comes on, I always vibe with it. So what do you guys think of Short and Bread?
Yeah, it's iconic. You know, they worked on it a lot. I really like the Moog synthesizer on it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty split because I really like this version. I like the synth work on it. I really like the vocals on this one. But the LA one with the guitars absolutely rips. So I'm split. I almost prefer the LA version, but if this one was about 16 more minutes, I might like it a bit more. I love it. There's that 17-minute on YouTube that
I was gonna say, well, it's your lucky day.
For some reason, for whatever reason, I've listened to that maybe 3 or 4 times. No joke, I have. So I do get the obsession with it. I do. But I like it. I do like that guitar one on LA a bit more, but they're interchangeable. It's a very charming song. I get the obsession with it. So I do feel like the guitar work though in the LA version kind of works the song a bit better because it is like a bluesy song, especially with its origins. So it makes a lot of sense to have that kind of like bluesy guitar on it. That kind of, but yeah, fun song. I get the obsession.
Some people don't like that though because they think it overpowers the song. I've heard like comments on that. They think that Ed Carter's guitar overpowers it.
I wish that version was a little faster. I think it kind of feels like it kind of slogs along to me. I don't know. I feel like maybe that is my issue with it too. I have to re-listen to the LA version because I haven't listened to it in forever. But I just know I definitely prefer this Adult Child mix of it. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard this song live, but they did it in '79 live. And it rips like like the tempo is flying and Dennis is like drumming super fast and like it honestly kicks ass live. So definitely a fun song. Do you have any
song? Yeah, it's iconic. What else can be said about it? You know, like this was a song that they had been working on all throughout the '70s. I don't know if it's the same tape that they used, like this version and the LA version. It sounds very similar. It sounds like they just basically re-recorded some stuff and erased some stuff and put on new stuff. And that's my theory, that they just kind of started this in the early '70s and just kept going along throughout the years and deleting stuff and re-recording stuff. And this version has Brian on the bass vocal versus the LA version has Dennis singing that. And yeah, I prefer, like Riley, I prefer the LA version just because it has Ed Carter's guitar. It kind of gives it like an injection of a little bit more power to it, a little bit more like bounce to it. But it's a decent song, not one that I come to very often, but it's pretty good for a traditional song, I would say.
All right, so now we'll move on to the next track, which is Lines. So this one I think opens really promisingly. Like I love the start, like the lines around the block, old lines, and then now the clock is striking 7:30, and then Carl comes in with that ooh lines. Like it's a really like promising opening. And then after that, it gets into like this, like it keeps going. It's not bad, and then it gets into like that. He's gonna tell her. He's gonna tell her to. He's gonna tell her, baby. And like from that point, he just kind of repeats that, and it just ends. So like the song just feels very incomplete to me. Like I like probably the first minute and a half of it, and then once that comes in, I'm kind of like, okay, like that's it. Like I felt like we were building up to something, you know. So I think the song has potential. I do like the chord change at the start and stuff, but I just don't like. I don't think it's finished. It doesn't feel like a completed song. It feels more like a fragment to me. So, what do you guys think of Lines?
Yeah, it's another one, like one of those interesting songs about the mundane. I think I wrote in my notes that my favorite part is when the song kind of feels like he's gonna tell her, like that part. I like that part of the song, but yeah, it's not super fleshed out, like you said. It's a little fragmented.
Riley?
I was muted. At best, it's decent. At worst, it's just incomplete. So it's
Yeah.
not too much to say. I think this was one that kind of shows that this album wasn't fully realized yet, and that they still needed to work on it a lot more. So
Yeah, for me too. Like this is a song where if they would have put a little bit more work on it, it would have been something really great. I think they did plan to do something with it. I just wonder because they only spent like those 2 months recording, and then like there was a few months where there was nothing done until Mike came. So I don't know if they're planning to release it like this, but I don't think it would have worked at all. Like it feels really unfinished, and it feels like there should be extra parts in there that are not there. So this song is kind of just like incomplete, like you guys said. It's decent, but it's incomplete.
All right, so now we'll move on to track 3 on, I guess, side 2. And this is on Broadway. This is a cover.
Oh.
I'm just gonna say it. This is my least favorite track on this proposed adult child track list by far. It just doesn't do anything for me. Nothing against. I think it's Al on lead vocal on this one. Nothing against his vocal, but like just the song doesn't do much for me, or the arrangement. I've heard other versions of this song as well. I think Eric Carmen did a version of this song on one of his solo albums. It also did nothing for me. I know multiple versions of this song, and it just doesn't really click with me at all. So I don't think it's the best song. I don't think it's a great cover. So what do you guys think about on Broadway?
I wrote that I like the harmonies, but I said it was a bit cheesy.
um, I enjoy it. I do. I really do. It's fun. I get it though. It doesn't really go anywhere too much, but I do
Yeah.
really enjoy Al's vocal, and I really like the production behind it, or at least what's kind of there. I feel it kind of been fully realized. It could have been something pretty fun. For a cover, I think it's pretty decent. Definitely not my favorite, but I do really enjoy it, and I feel like it definitely deserves a spot on MIU over Hey Little Tomboy. So
Nah, I disagree with that. That's
I
incorrect.
don't disagree with that. My statement, and I agree with it.
Justin.
I feel this cover is really dull. This was recorded during the 15 Big Ones session, so it was a pretty old track by this point. There was a reason why it wasn't put on 15 Big Ones, in my opinion. But yeah, I can see why Riley likes it, but for me, it's just really too samey, and it's just doesn't really go anywhere. Like it's the dynamics are just kind of just like flat.
On Broadway. That's like, I don't know.
It's a Drifters song originally. That's who originally recorded it.
Gotcha. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next track, which is another one that was actually from years earlier, similar to like Help Is on the Way, and this is Games 2 Can Play. So so this is another Brian song, and I think it's catchy. I like it a lot more than Help Is on the Way. I think it's got like a catchy little melody. I like to play games that 2 can play, and then I think it's fun. I like the lyrics about like I'm fat as a cow. How did I ever get this way? You know, like it's kind of Brian, like almost like poking fun at his own, you know, like maybe his own health. But I enjoy it. I think you said, Justin, it's kind of a response to the song "Games People Play" by Joe South, which is interesting. References it in the lyrics, like Joe South is singing "Games People Play," which I think is kind of fun too. Yeah, I enjoy it. I don't think it's not like a track I come back to too often from like this track list, but I like it enough. Matt?
Yeah, so Games 2 Can Play. I think my favorite part is like the I was laying on my back last Night. I really like that part of the song. It's an interesting tune, but it's another one that I kind of wish they re-recorded the vocals just so it would fit a little bit better.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it a lot. And I like the ha 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 ha. I like that part's pretty cool. I just don't think it fits adult child, or at least the kind of concept that's behind it. But I do enjoy it. I don't think it's the worst song on here. Yeah, I enjoy
It's
it.
a decent song. I like the acoustic guitar. That's really cool, but like Riley said, it doesn't really fit on here. Uh, they honestly could have left the song unreleased, and it would have made no difference to me. It's an okay song, but it's not. It doesn't really have any identity that really speaks to me. You know,
And that makes all the difference to me.
it makes
Fuck
all the
you.
difference to me.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where I feel like you can see why it didn't make Sunflower or Surf's Up, like why it just kind of remained an
For
outtake.
any of those
Like it just
hundreds of albums.
where's it gonna fit? I just don't know where you'd put it. So yeah, I like it though. I'm glad it's released. I just I can see why they passed on it for multiple albums. So all right, so we'll move on to the second to last track on Adult Child, and this is a fun one. It's called "It's Trying to Say."
Baseball.
Baseball, also known as Baseball's
Yeah.
On, yeah. And this has a Dennis lead. This one's just a lot of fun. I love the melody, like the "Oh, I love that simple way people live from day to day." It's great lyrics. I love that little middle section, like the batter swings and the ball goes sailing out in the crowd, and then like these like really like blaring backing vocals come in, like out in the crowd. Like it sounds so wrong, but like I kind of like it. I enjoy the song quite a bit. I like the like kind of like the it's like half baseball lyrics, half just kind of life lyrics, I guess. But I enjoy the song quite a bit. I would say all of like the non like ballads on Adult Child, this is my favorite. So I like it a
Oh
lot.
yeah.
Matt?
I really like that song too. I like the backing vocals, and I like Dennis's vocal on it too, albeit it is a little rough.
I'm kind of shocked. I see most people kind of shit on this one. I love it. I'm a big baseball fan. Like I got my Boston Braves hat right there. Right above it, I have the Daily News article from when Derek Jeter retired. He's my favorite baseball player. And I got a freaking Nolan Ryan little like statue right here for the New York Mets. I
Oh,
love
nice.
baseball.
That's
So
awesome.
like having the Beach Boys do a song and it's just Dennis saying, "I love that simple way." It's so catchy, and I hear people shit on it. This is one of my favorites from the material right here. I love it. It's so fun, and like it's something like musically complex, but it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. And I feel like it totally fits the little style of it, especially if like Brian's kind of going for that '40s era. Like that's like basically prime New York Yankees with like Mickey Mantle and show. Mickey Mantle didn't come until a little bit later, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah, yeah.
totally
Yeah,
fits.
this song it's got that nice little bounce to it on the piano, and yeah. The only thing that really throws me off about this song is that it's like two different songs. So you've got that with Dennis, and then you have the baseballs on part. And it doesn't really there needs to be some sort of link between it that like one's a chorus, one's a verse. It's just like they're two different songs smushed together. And it sort of works, but I don't know if it works entirely.
I love how it's like so random, like the way that they transition it back into like the original like melody is like they do
Yeah.
like the baseball's on, baseball's on. It just keeps going up. And I remember the
Yeah,
first time I,
yeah.
I was like,
I feel like something else was gonna be there.
I was like baffled by it. I was like, what the hell is this? Like they're just going up the scale here. Like when's it gonna stop?
Yeah.
And then it goes back into the melody after that. But I enjoy it. I think it's fun, and yeah, I love Dennis's raspy vocals on
Yeah,
it. So.
Dennis's vocal is great on it.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to the final track on the Adult Child track list, and this is the highlight for me. 100%. Still, I Dream of It. I think this is just an absolutely beautiful, kind of heartbreaking song. Really moving lyrics. I just absolutely love this song. I love the chords. If you ever listen to like, I'm sure all of us know it, like the Brian's like the piano version that was actually officially released on one of his solo albums. They released like the demo version, and it's just like hauntingly beautiful. Like it's just again, his vocal is rough on it, but I think that really enhances it. It enhances the emotional impact of the song. My favorite part is always it's like a chord change after the chorus, like, still I dream of it, of that happy day when I can say I've fallen in love. And then whatever that chord is after, when it goes into, but it haunts me so, like a dream that's somehow linked to all the stars above. Like, I love that whole like melody or that chord progression. It's just so beautiful. And this song really moves me a lot. I listen to this song a lot. Like, again, another one of those songs, like if you've gone through a breakup, or just having hard time in a relationship, like this song, I feel like you really connect with it and it really moves me. It's about like finding that, wondering if you're ever going to find that true love, and that's why I really connect with it. So what do you guys think of Still I Dream of It?
Yeah, it's a very emotional song. It's a very heartbreaking, haunting song. I said it was very Sinatra-esque. I could definitely like imagine like a Frank Sinatra singing this song. One of the best on the album, and I'm glad that this one has gotten an official release over the years.
Yeah, I feel like this was the one that kind of encapsulates kind of where he was at this period, especially with this the material he was kind of writing. I think this was the one he specifically wrote for Sinatra. And I could totally see Sinatra doing this. I think the lyrics are very beautiful, but also very haunting. It's just such a great song. This is the easy highlight for me. And I kind of joke around about a lot of the other material that he did or that they did for around this time that didn't get released. And I was kind of being serious with it, but at the same time, like this one especially, like how could you not release this one for MIU? I mean, it would have fit on MIU definitely more than freaking Winds of Change.
Winds of Change.
Yeah.
Like imagine this one closing MIU. Like a lot of people shit on MIU, but I feel like this would have given it a bit more of that seriousness that they kind of needed with it. It shows that Brian was still writing incredible songs at this point, even after Love You. So it's such a beautiful song, very haunting, very dark. Maybe one of the highlights of the 70s in general for me. And this is one that actually got a whole page in the Beach Boys book, and I was pretty glad that they kind of gave it that little shout out. So
I'm excited to read that.
It's not too much. There's nothing crazy, but it does get a whole page. I think there's actually I think it has a picture of the lyrics, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Oh yeah, the lyrics. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. The this song I first heard on the Good Vibrations. I think it was on the Good Vibrations box set, right?
Yeah.
And just it was heartbreakingly, hauntingly beautiful, and I can kind of see why they didn't release it as a Beach Boys song, because it's not really. It's more of like a Brian song. It's more of like a Brian solo song. And this was something that also he was doing as a demo for Frank Sinatra, really. He really wanted Sinatra to sing this, or Stevie Wonder, he said in 1970, 77. You could tell this song he put the most work into, the most effort into. This was kind of like the backbone of the whole album, of this adult child album. I would say probably the best song on this album.
Yeah. No, it's just so moving. And honestly, like, I think I mentioned this maybe on another episode, but like, if I were to rank my favorite, like, Brian ballads, this would be probably borderline top 10. Probably. Yeah, I'm going to say top 10, honestly. I just think it's beautiful. It's insane that, like, this didn't get a release at the time. Again, obviously, I'm glad that it has gotten releases on, like, the Good Vibrations box set, and then also
the demo. It took a while. Yeah.
But it took a while. And this is a beautiful song. I did want to hear your guys' thoughts on, like, the adult child version, where it's got, like, the big band arrangement, or like the like the very lush arrangement, versus the demo version. Because for me, I always knew the demo version first with the piano, and that, like, always just, like, really, like, moved me. When I first heard the arrangement, the Still I Dream of It arrangement on Adult Child, I thought the vocal was a little kind of hard to get past. I thought it was a little kind of corny sounding. It has grown on me now. Like, now I totally can enjoy it. Like, I do like it a lot. But in terms of, like, heartbreak and, like, having an emotional impact on me, I definitely prefer the demo version with the piano, where, like, it sounds, he's like, you picture him, like, up in his room at the piano, and just, like, pouring out his emotions and just, writing this beautiful, heartbreaking song. So what do you guys think of that? Do you guys have a preferred version of this song?
I prefer the adult child version.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like both. It's just I kind of prefer this one because the way I was introduced to this adult child album, because it was a long time being a Beach Boys fan before I actually decided to give it a listen. I kind of thought the idea of unlike Smile, that this one was kind of like unreleased for a reason. and like especially because I heard like it was very weird, weirder than Love You, and I'm like, well, I don't like roller skating, child, so I don't think I'm going to really like any of this. And then I kind of finally gave the thing a listen, and I think the first song I gave a listen was Deep Purple because I didn't know the song yet.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, is he going to talk about like the hard rock band or something? I don't know what my mindset was. And then I listened to that. And then I listened to It's Over Now, and then I was like, all right, Still I Dream of It. And I kind of was reading out the album as I listened to it. And then I read that this was one that he wrote for Sinatra, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be cool. And I listened to it, and it hit every single expectation and more. And just kind of being a fan of that like jazz, like 40s swing, big band stuff. This absolutely clicked with me right away. I really enjoy it as the orchestration. It was done by Dick Reynolds, and it sounds
Yeah.
incredible. And the
Yeah.
vocal, I actually think it's pretty decent. I feel like he sounds pretty desperate when he sings it, even though it's maybe not as like in the same way as the demo, but I still greatly enjoy this one. But I like both.
Yeah, I don't what's the version that's on the Good Vibrations box? So that's the one I usually listen to.
That's the
It's
adult child.
adult. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I don't think I've ever heard the demo version.
Yeah, no, give that a listen sometime. It'll move you, I think. It's very again, it's just the piano and just his voice, and it's a very like again, objectively like rough vocal, but I think you'll enjoy it. It's very moving. All right, so that's our run through of Love You and Adult Child. So it's been a lot of fun, guys, going through these albums. Do you have any final thoughts anybody wants to share about this, just like this period in general for the Beach Boys?
Very odd period, and I think, and I've said this before, this is a period of the band where I really would not show it to people unless they're already kind of tuned into the eccentricities of the group.
Yeah.
I know Brian was once quoted as saying, "Oh, listen to Love You After Pet Sounds." I personally think that's a horrible idea. I would not recommend doing that, but to each his own.
It's very weird. I don't think I'm ever gonna show anybody Love You unless they are a diehard Beach Boys fan and they just haven't listened to it yet.
Yeah.
I think the only song from Love You that I would share with somebody is I'll Bet He's Nice and Mona. It's pretty much just those two. Because I feel like even like The Night Was So Young and some of the other ones, you still kind of have to get your way into it. Because I feel like I'll Bet He's Nice, you can kind of get behind some of the synth work on it. And Mona is just kind of a beautiful song, I think. But some of the other ones, even like the really good ones, I feel like the rougher vocals, it won't work super well. But I'll Bet He's Nice and Mona have Dennis, so maybe you can kind of get behind it. Still I Dream of It, I'll probably show that to some people. I'll probably show It's Over Now, but there's only a handful of songs that I really think that like you could play in public and get away with. If you're playing Roller Skating Child or I Want to Pick You Up, you're gonna get a lot of weird faces. But yeah, to be honest, like any of my friends, I've never shown Love You to. I think I showed my brother Mona once. That's about it.
Yeah, I played Mona for my sister once and she thought it was awful. She thought it was like one of the worst things, but she also does not like the same kind of music I do, so take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, he said I like the music. Sounds weird, but I like it. I'm like, yep. You like the chord progression then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you're gonna love Phil Spector.
You gotta love Phil Spector. This is a very intriguing period for the band. A lot of fans really like this era a lot, just because there's so much weird stuff going on. And as we delve deeper into the 70s, it gets even weirder for a period. But yeah, the Love You is what can be said about it? It's just such a weird album. And like you guys said, like it's not that I really show a lot of music to my friends. I actually really don't. Just because I have such weird tastes to begin with. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I'd play like with my girlfriend, like while we're sitting at home here, kind of like making dinner or whatever. I wouldn't put on Love You. But as something that you listen to in like a solitary kind of environment, especially like late at night, that side two works really well. Late at night, that's kind of a late at night vibe.
Yeah.
And especially for me because I first got this album as a young kid, it reminds me so much of like a lot of the Beach Boys stuff of my childhood. So that's also what connects with me as well too, because of that aspect of it. So, um, but like a lot of fans, I find this a really intriguing period, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to kind of delve deeper into this. What exactly happened? Like, what do we know so far about this era? Which we found a little bit more than what we knew already, but there's still some stuff that's kind of missing about, especially about the adult child period. So it's going to be interesting to find out if any of the surviving members have any stories about that that will be coming out in the next couple years.
Yeah, and I think I said this a lot. I feel like Love You is kind of that like love letter to Brian's child, or Brian's love letter to his childhood in like as a teenager. An adult child is kind of his love letter to his childhood as a child in the 40s. Cause I feel like each album kind of has that vibe. It's definitely a bit more consistent in Love You, but yeah.
I can see
Yeah.
that.
In terms of my final thoughts, I agree with what Matt said about it. Like, I feel like with this period, like any songs from this period, whether it's Love You or Adult Child, I feel like you only want to introduce them to somebody that, or play them for somebody that already has kind of gone down the Beach Boys rabbit hole a little bit, knows about the history, some of the lore, like basically, and also has an understanding of Brian Wilson's life. I feel like Love You is a very personal album to Brian, like especially lyrically. And I feel like if you kind of like, if you read about the Beach Boys and like where Brian was at that time and all the struggles he's been through, I think it really makes this album a lot more enjoyable. And you can find a lot more charm in it, I think, like where you really like, if you actually know Brian Wilson as a person and, all the things he's been through. Whereas if you're listening to this and you don't know anything about the Beach Boys, this is going to come off as off-putting, a lot of this stuff. It just is. But if you know a bit about the lore and the history, and like you said, Justin, this period is so weird and fascinating because it's like the band is like selling out these huge venues again, and they're they're on the road and just like in the public spotlight, but yet they're recording some of the goddamn weirdest shit they ever did. So it's just a interesting time where like commercially they're kind of on top, but then like in terms of what they're recording, they're doing just like very weird stuff. So
And also
fascinating.
butting heads quite a bit too. Yeah.
Lots of fights. Obviously,
Yeah.
also you had Brian's marriage kind of in trouble. Carl was going through a lot around this time too. Obviously he was drinking on some of these recordings. So, Dennis also, I think he's drinking worse in a bit around this time as well. So, a lot of fighting, a lot of band issues going on around this time, but yet I feel like that just makes it even more fascinating. It's a really fascinating period. So, one last quote I just wanted to share before we wrap up here. I forgot to mention this one earlier, but I thought this was funny. There was a magazine, there's this underground magazine called Scram, and they referred to naysayers of Love You. They wrote, "Fuck them." The album showcases a truly original mix of humor and sadness. And I feel like, I get not liking this album. I totally understand it, but like, I feel like you can't argue that it's original. And I feel like it does have a really wide range of emotions throughout the lyrics, happy and sad, and just, it really moves me. And there's a reason I just love the album. It's one of my favorite albums by anybody. So I love it. All right. So I guess we'll wrap up there. So thank you everybody for listening to this 18th episode of Good Timin. I hope you all enjoyed the show. As always, I had a great time discussing both Love You and Adult Child with you guys. And I hope that our conversations today inspire some of you listening to give these albums another listen. As I said earlier, they definitely aren't for everybody, and I get that. But I think that musically there is a lot to enjoy and appreciate from this period in the band's history. And hopefully in the near future, we'll get another box set release that features a lot of the material that we've talked about tonight and introduces it to even more Beach Boys fans. So as always, if you like this podcast and want to hear more, feel free to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. We greatly appreciate the support as it motivates us to make more episodes in the future. We've been seeing a lot of your guys' comments lately, and we really appreciate the support. It's awesome to see this podcast grow, and we really appreciate all the positive feedback. So thank you so much. Also, as a reminder, the podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So there's plenty of different places to listen and keep up with the show. So thank you again, everyone, for listening, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.